Chapter 176. Mr. Shafik, I am looking forward to working with you. The Manor Butler product is simply revolutionary and will definitely be a big hit around the world. I have never seen such a smart and affordable product. It can even replace complex estate defense work, and it is very affordable. Master Shafik, I am the chairman of the Egyptian Wizard Magic Association. If you are willing, we can also reach a strategic cooperation with you. Master Shafik, I am the director of the International Cooperation Department of the Bulgarian Ministry of Magic. I would like to talk to you in detail about the possibility of popularizing manor housekeepers in Bulgaria. Do you have time? As more and more people came to Fudge Manor, after the introduction, everyone surrounded Aris and was very enthusiastic. The performance and protective ability of the manor housekeeper amazed the officials of the Ministry of Magic of various countries. They never knew that a small alchemical product could have such a powerful effect. The most important thing is that the price of the Manor Butler is cheaper than some ordinary flying brooms. It is simply the best choice for manor protection, no doubt about it. You know, any wizard family that owns an independent manor will spend a lot of money on the protection of the manor. For example, the Gate of Malfoy Manor cost at least tens of thousands of gold galleons to build, although that was just an example. Even an ordinary wizard family would have to spend at least 1,000 galleons on home protection to ensure the safety of their home. Not all wizards are good at protective spells and concealment spells. Even if some wizards know the spells, they can't cast effective protective spells at all. Everyone, thank you very much for your support. I would like to announce to you that Manor Butler is the latest product of the Shafik family. It is not only launched in England. If you are interested, you can discuss it with my butler. Aris' voice rang out among the crowd. He winked at Henry, who walked towards the wizards and introduced the specific roles and effects of the manor steward. Fudge tugged at Aris's clothes, looking a little excited. Master Shafik, looking at the current situation, it is not difficult to popularize manor housekeepers around the world. I think as long as the product can be supplied, within 2 months, everyone in the teaching community will probably know about this product. Thank you for your good wishes. Aris smiled and nodded slightly with an indifferent expression. This result was naturally what he wanted to see. He had never thought that popularizing manor housekeepers would be so simple and easy. This also means that his monitoring system will soon be able to spread across the globe. In this way, he is invincible in terms of information channels. If Voldemort shows up, he will be able to get the news quickly. The dinner went very smoothly. Henry was busy all night negotiating and communicating with dignitaries from various countries, while also recording some information. Aris was busy dealing with people looking for him, and he hardly stopped all night. After coming into this world, he felt the pain of socializing for the first time. But compared with the huge gains tonight, it is still worth it. Late at night, Aris returned to the castle. A red light suddenly flashed outside the window, and then the figure of the dark red dragon Iris appeared in the room. Master, Luna will be here tomorrow. She asked me to tell you in advance. Iris rubbed against Aris's arms like a spoiled child, flapping her wings gently. This little girl, finally couldn't help herself and came here early. That's fine, though. Hermione said earlier that she wanted to go to Diagon Alley in the second week after the holiday. It just so happens that we can go together and buy Luna's school supplies. Aris patted the little red dragon's head and said lovingly, "Are you having fun playing with Luna during this time?" Ever since Luna's accident, Aris has stepped up his protection of the little girl. When Iris is free, she usually stays with Luna, so she can play with her and protect her at the same time. Anyway, with Aris' current strength, there are probably few people in the entire wizarding world who can be his rival. Only with the little red dragon protecting Luna can he be completely relieved. I'm happy. Luna often takes me out to play. Iris said excitedly. Do you guys still go out often? Aris frowned slightly. Where did you go? Then there are so many places to go. Iris puffed out her chest proudly, not noticing Aris' frown at all. For example, the Magical Congress of the United States, and the Kingdom of Bhutan, which is known as the Holy Land of Magic. We even went to the ancient East and saw the different magical heritage there. I can guarantee that the distance Luna and I have walked during this period is definitely longer than the distance you have walked in your entire life. You look very proud of yourself. Alex frowned even more. Of course. Apart from me, I'm afraid no other dragon can travel around the world in such a short time. Aris, you really should go to the east. There are beautiful scenery and vast plains there, and there is also a completely different magic system from here. It is said that system is called Taoism. When Iris talked about this, her eyes were filled with excitement and excitement. Taoism. Aris was stunned and looked at the little red dragon in surprise. The magic system in the East is different from here. It is actually a Taoist tradition? Aris really didn't know this. Yes, there is a Taoist tradition in the East, which is different from the magic here, but there is also a spell system, but we haven't found much relevant information. They hid it so well. Luna is still just a little girl after all, and that land is still a bit chaotic right now, so we didn't stay too long. Elise explained. If there's a chance, I'd like to go see it. Aris Yasha's heart was moved, and she took a breath, then explained first, the mission I gave you was to protect Luna, why did you take her running around? There is no conflict between protecting her and taking her out to play. Iris blinked innocently. You've learned to quibble, haven't you? Aris glared at the little red dragon. There is no conflict. The little red dragon curled his lips in grievance. Okay, you've worked hard during this period. As long as Luna is happy, that's enough. Aris shook his head helplessly. But when you have time, can you take me out for a walk? Of course, Master, if you want to go, we can set off now. When Iris heard this, her eyes suddenly lit up. Forget it, there's no time for that yet. Aris shook his head. Although he also wanted to go to the east, or to the Kingdom of Bhutan, the place known as the Magical Holy Land. But now he has a lot of things to do. The crisis with Voldemort has not been resolved yet, so I really don't have much mood to go out for fun. However, Aris secretly made up his mind to go to the land in the east to have a look. Chapter 177. The next day, early morning. Elder brother. As soon as Aris opened his eyes, he saw a pair of golden hair swaying in front of him, and a cute and pretty face appeared in front of him. Luna. Aris pulled the quilt subconsciously, looked at the girl in surprise and asked, why are you here so early? Didn't I ask Iris to tell you? Luna said as if it was a matter of course, I said I would come today. But I didn't say it would be this early. Aris smiled helplessly. Because the weather has been a bit hot and humid recently, he has developed the habit of sleeping naked. Now he is wearing nothing under the quilt. Who knew Luna would come so early? Brother, aren't you happy that I came early? Luna looked at Aris with some confusion. No. Aris didn't know how to explain at this time, so he could only comfort her. You go out and play for a while, I'll get dressed and wash up, and then I'll take you to Diagon Alley. Okay. At this time, Luna seemed to have guessed something. She glanced at the quilt that Aris was holding tightly against his chest and smiled softly, then I'll go out first, you get up quickly. Okay. Aris held his forehead speechlessly. An hour later, the two of them finished their breakfast and arrived at Diagon Alley. Brother, have you heard? Luna and Aris were walking on the streets of Diagon Alley. The girl suddenly looked at Aris and asked, there is a very popular product in Diagon Alley recently. Even my father was full of praise for the product and was very interested in it. You know, normally he doesn't have much interest in anything other than the content of the Quibbler magazine. Oh? What's so popular? Aris asked casually. I think it's called, Manor Steward. Luna thought for a moment and answered. Manor Steward. Aris was stunned. He hadn't expected that Fudge would act so quickly, and that he must have put a lot of effort into publicity. Even Luna had heard about it. As far as I know, this thing shouldn't be on sale yet, right? Reese said. Yes, that's why I said it's popular. Luna looked up at a magic supplies store in front of her. Look over there, there's a promotion for the manor housekeeper. Aris looked up and saw a huge poster at a glance. It says, one of the greatest inventions in the wizarding world. Do you want to make your manor house safer? The manor butler will meet all your needs. The huge promotional poster almost covered the entire front of the magic supplies store. Not only that, there were a lot of models of manor housekeepers in various shapes placed in front of the magic props store. Although they had no practical effect, they also attracted a large number of people to stop and look. This is a bit too exaggerated. Aris looked at the magic supply store and narrowed his eyes thoughtfully. That's not an exaggeration. When the manor steward is released, the number of people here will probably be several times greater. The line of wizards who want to experience it alone will probably stretch to the end of the street. Otherwise, it would be impossible to attract my father's attention. Luna said seriously while looking at the magic supply store not far away. According to the time, it seems that today is the day when the manor's steward will appear. The Daily Prophet has put out several rounds of advertisements. Now there are probably not many people in the entire wizarding world who don't know about it. Yes, today. Aris nodded subconsciously. The first wave of finished manor butlers on the assembly line can indeed be released for sale today, thanks to advanced preparations and Fudge's full support. The time to market has been greatly advanced. Let's go over and take a look. Luna said suddenly excitedly. Even if you don't buy it, at least take a look at it. It must be very interesting. Actually, if you want to see it, it doesn't have to be so troublesome. Aris had just said half of his words when he was pulled by Luna and walked towards the magic supplies store in front. Brother, let's talk later. Let's go join in the fun first. The two soon arrived outside the magic supply store. At this time, many people were queuing up to buy the manor butler. There is a main spot on the window of the magic supplies store, which should be used to display the real manor butler, but now it is empty, which means that the product has not been officially launched yet. How long will it take? I can't wait any longer. It's only 100 gold galleons each, and it can effectively protect your home. It's really worth it. I've already inquired about it. The Ministry of Magic is now fully promoting this product. You won't lose money if you buy it. Moreover, there are discounts for Ministry of Magic employees. This time, the Ministry of Magic has invested a lot of money. I've never seen Minister Fudge praise a product so highly. Aris raised his eyebrows as he could hear the discussions around him. It seems that Fudge really puts his heart into this matter. Otherwise, the effect wouldn't be so good. You know, the Ministry of Magic has probably never recommended any product so strongly. This is probably the first time in more than a decade. Last time, the thing they strongly recommended was probably the wizard robe, the kind of cloak-like robe that not many people wore before. If we go further, we will probably find the magic wand. The magic wand, which is like a short stick, was not a hot seller when it first came out. Later, it was through the promotion of the Ministry of Magic that it gradually became popular and gained its current popularity. Wizards used to prefer to use crystal balls and long-handled wands to cast spells. Of course, this happened a very long time ago. Aris, it's really you. At this time, a voice came from behind. Hermione quickly squeezed next to Aris and greeted Luna again. I didn't expect you to really come today. I thought Aris was so busy and would cancel the appointment. How could that be? Brother is always very punctual. Luna smiled. Are you here to see the steward of the manor as well? Hermione asked. Yeah, that thing is really popular lately. Luna nodded. Actually, I really want to buy one to protect my parents. Manio's thing is really powerful. I don't know who invented it, but it's very practical and not expensive. What a pity. Hermione shook her head helplessly. Gringotts can only exchange a limited number of gold galleons for Muggle currency each year. If I buy a manor butler, I won't be able to buy school supplies. If you are short of money, you can ask Aris to borrow it. Luna winked at Hermione. The thing he lacks the most is probably the gold galleons. Aris looked at the two of them and smiled helplessly. Actually, I've always wanted to say. If you want a manor housekeeper, you don't have to squeeze in here, I'll give it to you. You're sending us? Luna and Hermione both looked puzzled. I heard this thing is very hard to buy, and the sales quantity is limited. You can tell by the long queue here. Could it be that the Shafik family has other channels to get it? Chapter 178. It's not that the Shafik family has other channels. This thing was made by the young master. This is just one of the family's channels. If the two young ladies want it, I'll have someone send a set over right away. Before Aris could explain, a voice came from the side. Henry came to the side of the group without knowing when. He bowed slightly to Aris and then looked at the two girls with a smile on his face. Hermione and Luna's eyes widened when they heard this. Brother, did you create the manor steward? You actually made this thing? The two of them shouted out almost at the same time, their faces full of surprise. They knew that Aris was very capable and that the Shafik family was very powerful. However, no one would have thought that the manor steward who has been so popular recently that almost everyone in the entire wizarding world knows about it would be created by Aris. It feels like when you are praising a spell for being very useful, you don't know that the inventor of the spell is right next to you. That feeling is so weird and unexpected. Brother. Luna suddenly became a little resentful. Why didn't you tell us just now? We are like two fools, squeezing here. It's just. I never thought that Aris would be such a person with such a bad taste. Hermione's tone was also a little strange, and both girls looked at Aris dimly. This scene made Aris feel helpless. I've been wanting to tell you guys just now, but you guys were too excited and didn't give me a chance to speak. Really? Hermione looked at Luna. Luna shook her head decisively. No. Aris looked at the two of them, feeling a little amused. These two little girls are actually telling lies with their eyes open. Forget it, if you say there is no need, then there is no need. Aris was too lazy to argue with the two little girls, so he turned to look at Henry and ordered, prepare a complete set of manor housekeepers for each of these two little girls. Full version. Hermione's eyes lit up slightly. Are there different versions of this thing? Of course. Aris nodded gently. The full version has more complete functions and stronger protection capabilities, especially in terms of privacy protection. It is more reliable. The full version of Manor Butler is an upgraded version specially developed by Aris. On the basis of strengthening protection and various functions, it also removes the monitoring backdoor of the magic energy system. However, Aris has no intention of selling this version. He usually only gives it as a gift to friends he trusts. The two sets given to Luna and Hermione are the only ones currently available. But I don't have that many gold galleons. Hermione was very happy just now, but in the blink of an eye, her brows frowned slightly again. This is a gift from a friend, and you still want to give me money? Aris looked at Hermione with amusement, feeling a little helpless. This little girl, it seems that she still doesn't completely regard him as her own. Really? Hermione's eyes lit up again after hearing Aris' words. Of course it's true. Aris nodded. Great, thank you Aris. Thank you, brother. Both girls had crescent-shaped smiles on their faces. Each of them took Aris' arm and pushed their way out of the crowd. Since we already know that this thing is Aris's masterpiece, there is naturally no need to continue to squeeze with these people. If you want to see the function of the manor housekeeper, just go home and study it slowly. Next, are we going to the bookstore? Hermione asked. That's right, but before that, we need to go to Ollivander's wand shop. Aris glanced at Luna, a smile in his eyes. He prepared a special gift for Luna. The little girl will definitely like it. Oh, I almost forgot. Hermione seemed to have just remembered something. Luna will go to school with us next semester, right? I almost forgot. Yes, I look forward to it every day now. Luna nodded. That's great. I really hope we can be in the same college so that we can study together more often. Hermione took Luna's hand and talked about school. I heard from my brother about the 4 major colleges of Hogwarts. Hermione, you are in Gryffindor, right? I heard that the college represents courage and fearlessness. It must be very interesting there. Luna's eyes sparkled with a hint of curiosity. Indeed, the guys in our school are all very good at causing trouble, like Harry and Ronald. Well, after staying there for a long time, I found that I also like adventure more and more. Hermione shrugged helplessly. I heard that you did something big last semester, but your brother didn't have time to tell me the details. Hermione, can you tell me about it in detail? Of course, no one should know this better than me. After the two little girls got together, they quickly started chatting. We talked about the customs and culture of Hogwarts and the interesting things that happened last semester. We also talked about the relationship between the 4 major colleges and the interesting things that happened among the students. Before I knew it, Aris was left behind. Aris was somewhat helpless about this. I could only follow them and head towards Ollivander's wand shop. Soon, the somewhat shabby wand shop that looked very historic appeared not far in front of the 3 people. It was not very conspicuous on the busy street. It stands quietly beside the street, like an old scholar who has witnessed the vicissitudes of history. Although it is inconspicuous, it gives people a very ancient and remote feeling. 01390413 Filo 230431291 We're here. Aris spoke, interrupting the 2 girls who were still chatting in front. Wand shop. Luna clenched her fist slightly, seeming a little nervous. Finally, I'm going to have my own magic wand. The little girl looked at Hermione beside her with excitement on her face. When I first walked into here, I must have felt the same as you do now. Hermione suddenly said with some emotion, at that time, I knew nothing about the wizarding world. To me, this world is full of novelty and mystery. For us, the first magic wand may mean more than just a weapon. It is also a spiritual sustenance and a symbol of the identity of a wizard. That's right. Aris also nodded slightly. From today on, you will become a real witch. Let's go, I've prepared a little surprise for you, I hope you'll like it. As he spoke, Aris took Luna's hand, looked at the girl with a smile, and walked into the store. Surprise! Luna's face showed a hint of anticipation. Then, the smiling face became even brighter. Chapter 179. Welcome. A voice came from inside as the few people walked into Ollivander's wand shop. Ollivander's eyes first swept over Aris, then he nodded slightly and greeted him, "Hello, Master Shafik." Then he looked at Hermione, thought for a moment and said, "Of course there is also you, Miss Granger. If I remember correctly, it should be Dragon Nerve, Vinewood, 9 3/4 inches, a very talented little witch." Finally, his eyes fixed on Luna. "Oh, I think Miss Lovegood should go to school this year, right? I think you'll need a wand of your own." "Yes, Mr. Ollivander." Luna glanced at Aris and nodded with a smile. "Thank you, Mr. Ollivander." Aris also nodded to Ollivander with a smile on his face. "Of course, I understand, I'm prepared." For some reason, Ollivander suddenly winked at Aris. Just when Luna was a little confused, he took out a silver-white box from a shelf behind him. The box was obviously stored separately from other wands. Ollivander was very serious, holding the box in his hand as if he was holding a holy object. "I'm ready, little girl, give it a try." Ollivander opened the silver box and took out a grey-black wand. This wand didn't look special, but Ollivander's words shocked Luna. The wand is made of a 1,000-year-old world tree, with a unicorn feather as the core. It's 12 inches long, extremely tough and sacred. I named it Elf's Words. This wand is specially made for you. Specially customized for me. Luna looked at the magic wand in front of her that seemed to have some kind of magical resonance with her, and she couldn't help but reach out and take it. The next second, a feeling of blessing emerged from Luna's heart from the inside out, and a beam of sacred light emerged from the wand and lasted for several seconds. "It's amazing. This wand is indeed tailor-made for you. Very few people can have this kind of wonderful feeling. This shows that you and the wand are very compatible." Ollivander looked at Luna and the wand in her hand with admiration. "Master Aris, it seems that your hard work has not been in vain. This wand was custom-made for me by my brother." Luna finally realized what was going on and looked at Aris in surprise. "So, this is the surprise you mentioned." "Of course, Master Aris is able to find such a rare material as the Millennium World Tree, and he knows you so well that he has selected the most suitable unicorn feather wand core for you." "Who else?" Ollivander explained with a smile. "When I first came here, I promised you that I would tailor a wand for you. You haven't forgotten it, have you?" Aris blinked at Luna. Of course not." Luna's face suddenly flushed, and then she hugged Aris's arms. "I just didn't expect my brother to remember it so clearly. I thought he had forgotten it." "Silly girl, how could I forget?" Aris reached out and rubbed Luna's hair as usual, smiling. On the side, Hermione watched this scene and suddenly felt inexplicably lost. Although she still had a smile on her face, for some reason she felt a sour and indescribable feeling in her heart, which made her feel very blocked. "Luna, congratulations on getting the wand that suits you best." Even though she felt a little uncomfortable, the little witch still congratulated sincerely. She really liked Luna from the bottom of her heart, so naturally she wouldn't feel any alienation in her heart because of this little bit of discomfort. Perhaps at this moment she still didn't know what that inexplicable feeling of loss meant. After all, at this time, they are still in the stage of being ignorant about feelings. "Thank you, Hermione." Luna turned around and hugged Hermione again, her face full of joy. "Miss Luna, if you don't mind, would you like to try the power of this wand?" Ollivander looked at the little girl expectantly and asked tentatively. Although he knew clearly that this wand must be extremely powerful, just like Aris's wand, he made this wand and naturally wanted to know its full performance. It would also provide him with valuable data for making his wand, and such opportunities were rare. Of course. Luna was also eager to try, with a gleam in her eyes. "Is it okay, Master Aris?" Ollivander looked at Aris again. After all, Aris paid for this custom-made wand, so his opinion is of course very important. As long as Luna has no objection, I certainly have no objection. Aris shrugged. Then please come this way. Ollivander made a gesture of invitation and led the few people into the shelves. Inside the shelf is a large studio, which contains some facilities for making magic wands, as well as a small practice scene with magic targets ready. Alex's wand was also tested here before. Well, let's try its power first. Ollivander waved his wand lightly, and a magic target was placed in the center of the studio. It's up to you now, Miss Luna. No problem. Luna nodded, then raised her right hand, and the tip of the wand emitted a light blue light. Wind whirl. Along with a loud shout, a violent gust of wind suddenly blew into the studio. The humanoid puppet that was used as a target was torn into pieces in an instant. This terrifying power made Ollivander's eyes widen and Hermione looked surprised. It's so powerful, it's almost as powerful as Master Aris's wand. Ollivander's eyes sparkled. Maybe this has something to do with the power of magic itself. Hermione muttered softly. Compared to Ollivander, he was more surprised that Luna's whirlwind was so proficient. She hasn't even started school yet, but she's already so strong. If she starts school, will she be able to catch up with me soon? Hermione secretly gasped. Those who are with Quillang and Alex are all geniuses, no, they are all monsters. Hermione suddenly felt unhappy again. If I take the initiative and spend every day with Aris, will my strength improve faster? Thinking of this possibility, Hermione secretly made a decision. Very good, keep up the pace. Ollivander quickly recorded the data and then found a magic target. Next is the test of magic properties and magic power amplification. Miss Luna, thank you for your hard work. It doesn't matter. I just want to try out the limits of this magic wand. Luna's eyes sparkled. Then, accompanied by a series of exclamations, the magic light once again lit up in the studio. Chapter 180. Half an hour later. Aris, Luna, and the others left Ollivander's wand shop. Thank you, brother. I like this wand very much. Luna looked at Aris with a smile on her face. As long as you like it. Aris also smiled. By the way, do you have any news about Harry? Hermione suddenly asked at this time. Harry Potter. Luna looked at Aris and shook her head slightly. I've been quite busy lately, so I'm not too sure. What happened? Aris thought about it and shook his head. In fact, he could probably guess what happened to Harry Potter. He must have been grounded again by the Dursleys. I wrote to him, but never received a reply. I wonder if he's in some trouble. Hermione said worriedly. Didn't receive a reply. Aris frowned slightly. How could it be 823? In the original book, in the summer before Harry Potter's second year, Dobby was indeed isolated from the outside world for a period of time, and even the letters written to him by Hermione and Ronald were intercepted. But now, Dobby has returned to Shawfik Castle with him and is no longer with the Lucius family. Moreover, the diary of Tom Riddle, the villain in the second grade, was also in his hands. Logically speaking, Dobby shouldn't look for Harry Potter again, right? What happened in this incident? Aris, how about we go see Harry? Hermione suggested again. I think it's okay. We don't have anything to do right now anyway. Luna also nodded and looked at Aris. The boy thought about it and finally nodded. Okay, but before that, we'd better contact Ronald and see if he has any news. At the same time, he also needs to think carefully about the Savior's rescue plan. No problem, I'll write him a letter right now, and I should receive a reply this afternoon. Hermione nodded quickly. Then let's go buy Luna some other things she needs for school. The Weasley family. Ronald and the Weasley twins were standing in front of an old Ford car, looking at it carefully. I guess this car can fly at over 300 horsepower per hour. Cool, my dad actually brought him home, that's incredible. It would be nice to take it for a spin. Ronald reached out and touched the hood of the Ford, then pressed his face against it with an exaggerated expression. Do you feel it? I seem to hear it roaring. Come on, it hasn't started yet. Fred rolled his eyes. If you really want to feel its speed and roar, you can actually. He exchanged a glance with George, and continued with temptation in his eyes, drive it and give it a try. How can this be possible? Ronald shook his head in confusion. If Dad and Mom knew about this, they would definitely skin us alive. Dad has gone to work, and Mom is not at home today. As long as we don't tell her, she will come back before dark. Who knows? George's tone was also full of temptation. But Ronald was still a little hesitant. At this moment, an owl suddenly flew over from a distance. Ronald, it looks like your letter. My letter. Ronald stretched out his hand, and the owl just threw a letter into his hand. It's a letter from Hermione. Ronald opened the letter directly. Our Miss Know-It-All, is there anything I can help you with? George and Fred also came over. Soon, Ronald finished reading all the contents of the letter. She asked me about Harry's news, saying that he hadn't received a reply for the whole summer, and she was going to go to Harry's house with Aris to see what happened. Ronald frowned slightly. Come to think of it, we haven't received any reply to the letter we wrote to Harry. Did something really happen to Harry? How about we go to Harry's house as well? Suoji suggested. Yes, he is your best friend, Ronald. Fred patted Ronald on the shoulder. But how do we get there? Ronald looked at his two brothers. Need I say more? Fred and George said in unison, looking at the Ford F-17 nearby in tacit understanding. Of course I drove it. This is not a good idea. Ronald looked at George and the others with suspicion. He highly suspected that these two guys didn't want to go see Harry at all, but simply wanted to drive the car out for a spin. Aren't you worried about Harry's current situation? He may be being abused by his uncle, locked up in a small house, not allowed to go out, and not allowed to receive letters. Think about it. George patted Ronald's shoulder earnestly. Zero, do you really want to watch Harry continue to suffer? Of course not. Ronald shouted without thinking, let's go, let's get him out of bed. He patted the Ford flying car, his expression firm and decisive, just drive it. Aren't you afraid that Mom will find out? Fred asked jokingly. Let's talk about it after you figure it out. Ronald said as he sat in the passenger seat of the speeding car. You'd better write a letter back to Hermione, otherwise she won't know you are going to do such a earth-shattering thing. George reminded her friendly with a smile. Yes, that's right. Ronald finally realized, maybe we can run into him when we get over there. Aris will surely be able to think of a better way to rescue Harry. With a roar, the Ford car flew over the burrow and soon disappeared. This car has a built-in cloaking function so that muggles can't see it. Ronald obviously knows this, otherwise he would not drive it around in the city. Afternoon. 4. Privet Drive. Little whinging. A bus with a unique shape suddenly stopped on the side of the road. No one saw where the bus came from or where it was going. It appeared so suddenly, and then disappeared just as suddenly. Only 3 little wizards were left with pale faces, looking as if they were about to vomit at any time. I swear, I will never ride the night bus again in my life. 0.1. Aris gritted his teeth and spoke, trying to suppress the churning feeling in his stomach. This is definitely the most unrestrained bus I have ever taken. Hermione had just opened her mouth when she couldn't help but ran to the side and vomited. But I feel this is also a good experience. Only Luna remained calm at this time, although her face was obviously pale. It's indeed a very novel experience. Aris rubbed his forehead and looked at Luna helplessly. Anyway, this is the first and last time I'll ride this car, I promise. Okay, let me see. This should be where Uncle Harry lives, right? Aris's eyes swept around and finally landed on a house opposite. The house number reads, Number 4, Privet Drive. Chapter 181. I checked it out, it's indeed Harry's uncle's house. A moment later, Hermione returned to where Aris was. I just knocked on their door pretending to ask for directions, and it was Harry's uncle who opened the door. You may not be able to imagine, I was so nervous that I almost turned around and ran away. Harry's uncle seems really difficult to get along with. The little witch patted her chest with lingering fear. Well done. Aris praised generously, and then continued to ask, what happened next? Did you see Harry? No. Hermione shook her head. Harry is not in their living room. I think if he has not gone out, he is in a room in this building. He may be locked up. Because I deliberately amplified the sound because I wanted Harry to hear it. If he heard it, it's impossible for him to have no reaction at all. So I guess he should be in a room on the 2nd floor. Unfortunately, we are not allowed to use magic outside of school during the summer vacation, otherwise we could easily locate Harry with a Pathfinder and apparition spell. Hermione sighed somewhat regretfully. It's true that it's not very convenient for us to use magic, but that doesn't mean Luna can't do it. Aris said with a smile. In fact, his wand had not been registered with the Ministry of Magic, and no trace had been planted in it. This was thanks to his strong money ability, but Luna had not yet started formal school, so the wand had not been planted with traces. Aris now also wants to see Luna's true strength. Oh, that's right, Luna hasn't officially started school yet. Hermione quickly reacted. How about it, Luna, can you? Reese asked. Luna nodded without hesitation, of course. After saying that, she smiled slightly, then drew out her wand and whispered a spell, Revelation of the True Form. This spell actually has many functions. It can display the surrounding environment and terrain, it can also use magic to recreate things that have happened around it, and it can also mark the people and objects you want to find within a certain direction. At this time, Luna was using the third method. She was going to be in the house in front. I went to Harry's specific location. Almost instantly, when Luna's magic power was released, there was immediate feedback. Found him. He's in the room on the second floor of this house, on the outside. Luna looked up at a room facing the street and pointed. Is it here? Aris murmured, then smiled, and said, now that the location is determined, things will be relatively simple. He glanced at the two girls and said, I'll go over there and see if I can bring him out directly. Having said that, Buoyancy took a step forward. The next second, a crackling sound was heard. He had disapparated from where he was. This is... Hermione stared at the place where Aris disappeared with wide eyes, her face full of disbelief. Apparate. It should be. Luna nodded slightly, not too surprised. Luna, this is... apparition. Hermione still felt it was outrageous. This is a magic that can only be learned by students in the 5th grade and above, and it needs to be strictly supervised by the Ministry of Magic. Aris can actually be used now. Don't you think this is outrageous? If it's my brother, it should be normal. Luna smiled and didn't care at all. At this moment, Luna seemed to be completely conquered by Aris's strength and talent, and did not think there was anything strange about it. Come to think of it, if there is anyone in this world who knows Aris best, it must be Luna. She has been watching Aris grow up since he came into this world. It can be said that she knows a little bit about everything about Aris. So, it was just a small apparition, so Luna didn't find it strange at all. The other side. Harry Potter had been feeling that something was a little unusual this afternoon. He first saw from the window that there seemed to be a strange bus parked on Privet Drive, but when he looked carefully, it had completely disappeared. At this time, he didn't know the existence of the night bus, so he didn't know that it was a bus belonging to the magical world. Then, Harry Potter seemed to hear a familiar voice. But he was not sure, because he did not dare to think about it. How could Min appear here? When he listened carefully, the voice disappeared again. Everything seems like an illusion. He was almost going crazy. Everything went wrong since his cousin Dudley insulted his father last time, calling him a wild child without a father, and he accidentally threw a piece of cake in his face. He is under house arrest. I was locked in a room on the 2nd floor. Every day, except for going to the toilet, even meals were brought to me by my aunt. There is no freedom at all. But unfortunately, he had no other choice. He could neither send any letters nor receive any letters from his friends. No, he seemed to have seen owls coming to Privet Drive, but those owls always flew around and then disappeared, as if they didn't find their target. Or maybe the letters they sent were withheld by someone. Just then, a crackling sound suddenly rang out in his room. This familiar voice made Harry's eyes tighten instantly, and then, when he saw the person who operated, his face suddenly showed ecstasy. Aris, it's you. Harry stood up and looked in disbelief at the boy who had just appeared in the room. What you just did was... apparition, right? It's hard to believe that you have mastered such advanced magic. No, Aris, how come you are here? Harry asked countless questions in one breath. When he came to his senses, he saw that Aris did not speak immediately. Instead, he came to the door of the room and put his ear to it, seeming to listen to the movement outside. Anjing, your uncle seems to be coming. Aris waved his hand and cast an incarnation spell on himself. Then, he quietly retreated to the corner of the room. Hearing this, Harry's face suddenly showed tension. But after seeing Aris's perfect disillusionment spell, he breathed a sigh of relief and looked towards the door of the room. What are you doing, you little brat? Are you destroying the house? Harry's Uncle Dursley slammed the door and yelled, I'm sure there was a very harsh sound coming from here just now. You'd better be quiet. Okay, I understand. Harry replied reluctantly. In order to prevent Aris from being discovered, he could only temporarily suppress his anger and cater to Dursley. Sure enough, as soon as Harry finished speaking, there was no movement outside the room. Obviously, Dursley was confident in his protective measures and did not think Harry could jump out. Aris, it looks like he's gone. Harry listened at the door for a while, then looked to the corner of the room and whispered. Although there seemed to be nothing there, he was sure that Aris had not left. Well, it seems like you haven't had a good time these days. Aris lifted the disillusionment charm and looked at Harry Potter with a smile. So, tell me, what happened? Chapter 182. It's nothing, actually. It's just, because of some coincidences, my uncle put me in solitary confinement, so as you can see, I basically spent this summer vacation in this room. Harry Potter shrugged helplessly. Aris took a look at the room and could tell that Harry hadn't been out for quite a while. The room was a bit messy and had a not-so-pleasant smell. Aris shook his head and said helplessly, in your case, you can just call the police and arrest them. Call the police? Harry was stunned. He had never thought of calling the police to arrest his uncle and aunt. This kind of thing sounds so exciting. But if he really did it, Harry still felt a little weird. He is a wizard, so he called the police in the Muggle world and asked the police to help him solve the problem? There is always a feeling of having no face. Forget it. Harry smiled bitterly and shook his head. Actually, I was also wrong in this matter. I shouldn't have burned Dudley's eyebrows, and that piece of cake shouldn't have been wasted on his head. Aris instantly became interested. Is there any other wonderful story among them? What on earth happened? Aris couldn't help but ask again. Harry sighed, sat on the bed, and then slowly said, my uncle's friends were coming that day, and they told me to hide upstairs and not go downstairs. I actually didn't want to get involved with them at all. Dudley shouldn't insult my father and mother, he shouldn't say that. Don't get excited, calm down. What did he say? Aris comforted and continued to ask. He said my parents were freaks, and I was freaked too. Harry suppressed his anger and clenched his hands, then, you can probably imagine what happened next. Because of extreme anger, my magic power rioted. The magic burned off Dudley's eyebrows, leaving his brow bone bald. Also, the cake that was originally used to celebrate was smashed on the head of the lovely girl who had just walked in, and hadn't had time to sit down yet. Harry touched his nose awkwardly. So, actually, I was wrong too. I shouldn't be so impulsive. After saying that, Harry lowered his head and shook his head helplessly. After hearing the whole story, Aris frowned slightly. He originally thought that without Dobby's interference, the Dursleys' banquet should not have any problems, but now it seems that what was supposed to happen has still happened. There seems to be some kind of power in the dark that makes everything proceed according to a certain trajectory. Like the power to repair the rules of this world. Aris didn't know whether this situation was good or bad. But he knew very well that this force should not be completely unstoppable. Just like before, the diary that was supposed to be delivered to Ginny Weasley is now lying in his system space. If the mysterious repair power is strong enough, this diary shouldn't be here with him. In other words, even if it appeared in his hands, it would eventually return to Ginny Weasley's hands. Now, he was more curious about the extent to which this power to repair the world's rules could be achieved. Also, under what circumstances will the power of repair appear? One question after another kept popping up in Aris' mind. He looked at Harry Potter and suddenly smiled. Okay, stop worrying about it. Now I give you two choices, either you stay here, or, follow me. Aris stood up and looked out the window. From here, he could see Hermione and the others on the other side of the street, observing carefully. However, the view from the street through the window is not very clear. That's why they didn't realize that Harry Potter was imprisoned here at the beginning. Of course I want to leave. Harry said almost without thinking. I don't want to stay in this damn place for even a moment. But how are we going to leave? Harry closed his mouth subconsciously as soon as he opened his mouth. Just ignore me. Since you can apparate here, you must have a way to take me away, right? Of course there is a way. Aris nodded slightly. In fact, he had more than one way to get Harry out of here. The easiest way was to use apparition to take Harry away with him. But if our savior wants to try something exciting, it's not impossible. Do you want to walk out in front of your uncle, or leave secretly? Aris said in a slightly bewitching tone with a smile on his lips. Harry hesitated slightly. Forget it, they are your relatives after all. Aris thought for a moment and shook his head slightly. Besides, this place still has the power to protect you. You will come back eventually. Let's just leave quietly and don't cause any more trouble. What do you think? Aris asked, looking at Harry. Yeah. Harry nodded. Then you clean up first. Aris said as he came to the door of the room and listened to the noise outside. Thump thump thump. At this moment, the sound of footsteps coming up the stairs suddenly sounded. Aris looked at Harry and reminded him, it seems your uncle is here again. I'll speed up. Harry didn't stop, and kept putting the clothes in the closet into a large suitcase, and swept all the textbooks on the bed into it. It seems a little too late. Aris shook his head helplessly. As soon as he finished speaking, the sound of a lock being unlocked was heard outside the room. Apparently, Harry's uncle wanted to call it quits. What on earth does he want to do? Harry frowned and his hands moved faster. No matter what he wants to do, you'd better hurry up. Aris reminded again. It will be ready soon. Harry's forehead was already covered with sweat. At this moment, a roar suddenly came from outside the door. UBD, don't think I don't know what you are doing, do you want to escape? Don't even think about it. I've felt something was wrong since this morning. Is that girl a freak like you? How dare you team up to deceive me? Do you really think I know nothing? The roar sounded like King Qian's, and it made the whole house tremble. Aris was a little surprised that Harry's uncle actually knew Hermione's identity. And I guessed that they were here to rescue Harry. This old man doesn't seem that stupid. This is interesting. Harry threw the last of his clothes into the suitcase and looked anxiously at Aris. Aris, hurry up and leave. As soon as he finished speaking, the door of the room was violently slammed open. Aris smiled and looked at the fat man who rushed in, and waved gently, Hello, Mr. Dursley. Dursley was obviously stunned when he saw the stranger who appeared in the room at some point. By the time he reacted, Aris had already grabbed Harry's shoulders. Then, crackle. After a sound, the two figures in the room disappeared. Dursley stood there with his eyes wide open, and after a while he held his head and screamed. It seems that he has been greatly stimulated. Chapter 183. Harry Potter. As soon as Aris and Harry's figures appeared, two voices were heard. Hermione looked at Harry Potter, who was carrying a large suitcase and looked a little embarrassed, and said with a look of understanding on her face, You are really locked up by them, right? Hermione, Luna. Harry greeted the two girls, and then said helplessly, It seems that you all already know. Yes, that's the fact. I knew it. Hermione glanced at the Dursleys angrily. Why do I keep writing to you but never receive a reply? Have they even deprived you of your right to communicate? Don't mention it. Harry shook his head. Obviously, there is nothing that can be done about this. You should sue them for abuse. Hermione pouted angrily. That's what I advised him to. Aris shrugged. But the fact is, Dumbledore told me to stay here. He said that besides Hogwarts, this is the safest place. Harry smiled bitterly. Well, he is not wrong. Aris nodded. Why? Hermione frowned in confusion. I actually think that they are the safest place. Isn't Aris's castle safe? Even Ronald's house is safer than here. Hermione didn't know that the protective spell that Harry's mother cast for him required the protection of blood relatives to be effective, so she didn't quite understand what Dumbledore and Aris said. I'll tell you about this in detail next time I have the chance. Aris looked up at the other side of the road, his eyes moved slightly, as if he discovered something. Harry didn't know much about the guardian spell, so he didn't say anything at this time. Hermione could only suppress her curiosity. Is there something coming? At this time, Luna's voice sounded. You noticed it too. Aris looked at the girl approvingly. I heard the sound, but why? Luna's eyes were puzzled. Obviously, there were some things she still didn't understand, such as why she clearly heard a sound similar to that of a car running, but didn't see any vehicles around. Because it's invisible. Aris smiled and shook his head. As his voice fell, an old Ford car suddenly appeared at the corner of the street and drove straight towards this side. Hey? Night taxi. Luna looked at the old Ford oddly. Does the wizarding world have this kind of transportation? Aris was stunned. No. Luna shook her head. 11 Harry and Hermione were speechless. The two looked at the approaching old Ford with curiosity in their eyes. It seems to be Ronald in the car. Harry's eyesight was pretty good with his glasses on, and he immediately spotted the red-haired boy who was peeking out from the passenger seat. Yes, and Fred too. Hermione nodded affirmatively. Are they here to see me too? Harry's eyes lit up. I wrote to him before, mentioning that I came to look for you, so their purpose should be the same as ours. But the timing of their arrival is really coincidental. If they came a little later, we might have left. Hermione shrugged. She didn't feel surprised by Ronald's appearance, she was just a little curious about the car. The Weasleys, a wizarding family, actually use Muggle transportation? Soon, Ronald and the others also spotted Harry and his friends standing on the street corner. In order to avoid the sight of the Dursleys, they deliberately stayed away from number 4, Privet Drive. However, there were fewer people on this street, so Harry and his friends were still quite conspicuous when they stood together. Harry. Before the vehicle stopped, Ronald had already stuck his head out of the car and started shouting. Ronald. Harry also waved his hands excitedly. Are they really not afraid of being discovered? Hermione looked at Aris and muttered softly, then glanced at the Dursleys' house with concern. It's okay. It doesn't matter if they find out. The Dursleys probably won't dare to come out at this time. Aris smiled and did not stop Ronald and Harry's high-profile greetings. It was exactly as Aris said. At this moment, the Dursleys were standing by the window on the second floor, looking at the corner of the street. There was fear and confusion in Dursley's eyes, and his body was trembling slightly, as if he had not yet recovered from the previous shock. Harry's aunt folded her arms and watched coldly. His eyes were full of disgust and disdain. But there seemed to be an inexplicable envy in her eyes. But that trace of envy was only fleeting and did not last more than 10 seconds. Are we really going to let him go like this? Dursley was obviously unwilling, his shaking fists clenched tightly, as if he wanted to rush out and have a big fight with those little wizards. What, you dare to stop those guys? This time, he is not alone, his friends are here too. Harry's Aunt Petunia said coldly. Dursley shrank back. Looking at the group of little wizards on the street, he said nothing more. Of course he didn't dare. Harry Potter alone was enough to give him a headache, so how could he dare to provoke other community teachers? Besides, if other people on the street saw him hanging out with these freaks, how could he continue to live here? Just like that, the two of them watched in silence as Harry got into Ronald's car from a distance. Nothing more was said. On the other side, Hermione couldn't help but speak again. Aris, are you sure they can get this car back? Don't worry, dear Miss Granger, we will make sure to safely deliver the customers in the car to their destination. A head suddenly popped up from the back seat of the car that had just started. George waved his hand at Hermione, don't underestimate us or this car. After saying that, the Ford car sped out quickly and then flew up suddenly. Oh my god, that's a flying car. Hermione's eyes widened. These guys are finished. Aris held his forehead in silence, don't they know that they need to reactivate the stealth function? There must be at least a dozen people on this street watching this car fly into the sky, right? Luna stared blankly at the Weasley twins' extraordinary actions. They definitely did it on purpose, just to show off. Hermione held her forehead in her hand speechlessly. What now? Both girls looked at Aris. Aris turned around and looked at the situation on the street. Fortunately, Fred activated the cloaking device just after the car took off, so the car was only flying in the air in an invisible form for a few seconds. Therefore, the Muggles who were able to see the car take off within these few seconds should be within 100 meters radius. As long as we deal with these Muggles, there should be no problem. In the end, I still have to clean up their mess. Aris shook his head helplessly, then drew out his wand and pointed it at the sky. Everything is forgotten. A bright blue light suddenly flew towards Bangkok. This light attracted all the Muggles who had just seen the flying car and were still in doubt and shock. Then, the Muggles' eyes gradually became dull. In the end, it was as if nothing had happened. Everyone returned to their normal life. Of course, there is only one family as an exception. Aris did not erase the Dursleys' memories. Chapter 184. Okay, let's go, I'll take you home. Aris looked at Hermione and said. I remember your home is also near here, right? It's only 2 blocks away. I can go back by myself. Hermione shrugged. It's okay, we'll take you back. Aris smiled, and the 3 figures gradually disappeared at the end of the street. An hour later, Rhys and Luna returned to the castle. Brother, I will study with you here before school starts, is that okay? Luna seemed to have made up her mind long ago and even packed her luggage. Don't worry, I've already asked my father for permission, and he agrees. The little girl stuck out her tongue, as if she was embarrassed for acting without consulting her boss. Of course. Aris smiled, couldn't help but reach out and ruffle the little girl's hair, and said gently. I have a lot of books here. You can read whatever you want. I also have first-grade textbooks here. If you want to preview in advance, you can take my notes and read them. By the way, the things you need for school will be delivered soon. Check to see if you have missed anything. If you have, ask Uncle Henry to buy it for you. I got it, brother. Luna smiled sweetly, then walked back to her room happily. That's right, Luna now has her own room. After all, it's not a good idea to always live in Aris' room. That room is right next to Aris' room. After watching the little girl leave, Rhys turned and walked towards the laboratory. The castle's laboratory was specially built by Aris. It is fully functional and has very good protection capabilities. Although it is not as good as the protection of Hogwarts, it is absolutely impossible for ordinary wizards to break in. Even for someone of Voldemort's level, it would take a lot of effort to enter the laboratory. This process was enough for Aris to respond. Moss, are the results of the Philosopher's Stone's analysis out? Aris came to the control console in the center of the laboratory and opened a notebook. There are a lot of data densely recorded on it, and some of them are specially marked by Aris in red pen. The first page of the notebook reads, Philosopher's Stone Analysis Notes. Master, I have conducted a comprehensive analysis of the Philosopher's Stone and have currently extracted about 40% of the information. This stone is essentially a power stone, but with the use of wonderful alchemy, it has the power of immortality. According to the current progress, if we want to fully analyze this Philosopher's Stone, it will probably take about 2 months. As Moss's voice fell, a smile appeared on Rhys's face. That means, in 2 months, we can start mass-producing the Philosopher's Stone, right? That's not accurate. Moss's voice suddenly became serious. The power of immortality is very mysterious. If you want to mass-produce the Philosopher's Stone with this power, you need not only the corresponding materials but also some other things, such as Nicholas Flamel. We can't mass-produce it even after the analysis is completed. Aris frowned, a little puzzled. Why is it so? Moss has already explained that immortality is an extremely mysterious power. Guang Guang Neo's voice echoed in the laboratory. Aris fell silent, and finally sighed deeply. I see, it seems that I underestimated this stone. His eyes swept to the other side where there was another diary. It was Tom Riddle's diary. I'm in a bad mood, so I'll go play with Tom. Suburbs of London. Some remote town. This is a very gorgeous house. From the outside, it seems that the owner is very particular and has spent a lot of effort on this house. The standard British style, every piece of wood is made of the best materials, and the design of the house also reveals the style of a noble man. Of course, if there are house designers in the wizarding world. Sir, it has been taken care of. Sheriff, wearing a black robe, bowed slightly. The old man who was handing out the shawl nodded slightly and looked at the letter in his hand seriously. This is an invitation letter. A very formal invitation. The content of the invitation letter is an invitation from Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry to Mr. Gilderoy Lockhart to serve as the Professor of Defense against the Dark Arts. Grindelwald put away the invitation letter with a smile, and then looked at another letter on the table. That was the letter Lockhart wrote to Hogwarts, expressing his willingness to go there to serve as a professor. Please send this letter. I, Green, handed the reply letter to Sheriff. Sir, do you want to? Sheriff looked at the reply letter in his hand with some confusion. Next semester, I will be the Defense Against the Dark Arts professor at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Grindelwald patted Sheriff on the shoulder and said with a smile, so you can call me Professor Grindelwald from now on. Sir, are you serious? Sheriff widened his eyes, his face full of disbelief. The famous dark wizard Gellert Grindelwald actually wants to be a teacher at Hogwarts? No matter how you think about it, this is just like a fairy tale. What's the problem? Grindelwald shrugged nonchalantly. That's Dumbledore's school. Will you be in trouble if the White Wizard finds out your identity? Sheriff frowned worriedly. 0, let's wait until he finds out. Grindelwald smiled confidently. He was very confident in his transfiguration skills. After all, he had been undercover in the American Ministry of Magic for so long, and no one noticed anything unusual in his identity. This was a surprise he had promised a boy, and he couldn't go back on his word. I understand, sir. Seeing that Grindelwald had made up his mind, Sheriff didn't know what to say. He turned his head and looked towards the corner of the room, where Lockhart had fainted, lying on the ground like a dead dog. What about him? Eliminate his memory and throw him into the African savannah. Grindelwald said casually, if he can come back alive, it means he is not doomed. How could such a swindler actually receive an invitation to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry? Grindelwald sneered, it seems that Albus is getting more and more confused. But it's better this way, I will feel less guilty. He glanced at Lockhart, a hint of disdain flashed in his eyes, and shook his head slightly. Yes, sir, I understand. Sheriff didn't ask any more questions, mentioned Lockhart, and left with a teleportation. Grindelwald was the only one left in the huge house. He took out the invitation letter and looked at it with a smile. He muttered to himself, I wonder what that kid's reaction will be when he sees me at school. Will he be able to recognize me? I'm really looking forward to it. Chapter 185. The holiday time passed quickly. Aris spent almost all his time and energy on analyzing the Philosopher's Stone and conducting in-depth research on magic circles. He would only occasionally find time to get together with Luna, Harry, and the others at the burrow. As time goes by, the day when school starts is getting closer. On this day, Aris was packing his luggage, preparing to go to Hogwarts in 2 days. Suddenly, an owl hovered in front of his window and left a letter. This letter is from Hagrid. Hagrid actually wrote to me at this time. Aris felt a little strange and frowned slightly. Throughout the summer vacation, Hagrid occasionally wrote to him, telling him about the situation in school and the situation of the centaurs in the Forbidden Forest. But now that school is about to start, he still wrote to him. In such a situation, either something very important is about to happen. Or maybe, something has already happened. Aris opened the letter and read it. The letter said that some strange things had happened in the school and hoped that he could go to the school immediately to help investigate. Aris felt even more puzzled. Something happened at school, so let him help investigate? No matter how you look at it, this is a bit strange. Is Headmaster Dumbledore not at school? Is there anything he can't fix? Moreover, Hagrid's tone in his heart was so urgent. It looks like something really happened. Aris didn't hesitate too much and quickly made a decision, set off immediately. He packed his luggage in a hurry, ready to set out immediately. At this time, Luna walked in from outside. Brother, what happened? The girl obviously noticed that something was wrong with Aris' expression. Aris quickly told Luna about Hagrid's letter. I want to go with you too. Luna immediately expressed her desire to go to Hogwarts with Aris. I can't let you risk it alone, let's go to Hogwarts together. Aris hesitated for a moment, and finally nodded, okay, let's go together. Luna was supposed to go to Hogwarts this semester, just a matter of a few days, so it would be the same to take her there earlier, so Aris did not refuse. The two of them hurriedly packed their bags, and after they were ready, they left Shawfik Castle together under the reluctant gaze of Henry and Shirlea. Because it is not known whether the Hogwarts special train will depart, Aris does not plan to take the train to Hogwarts, but directly summons the dark red dragon Iris. Iris, please take us to Hogwarts. I think you are familiar with the route, right? Of course, no problem, leave it to my master. Iris's body suddenly grew larger and turned into a giant dragon. She then slowly squatted down beside Aris and Luna, and then a breeze lifted the two of them onto the dragon's back. Master, Miss Luna, please sit down. I am about to set off. Accompanied by a dragon's roar, Aris only felt his body shake, followed by a violent gust of wind. When they came to their senses again, they were already 1,000 meters in the air. Luna was obviously used to this level of flying. After all, she had traveled around the world with Iris before. There is still time to think about other issues. Should we tell Harry and Ronald about what happened at school? Luna asked suddenly. Aris thought about it, shook his head slightly, and then said, Don't tell them yet, let's see what happens. He always had a hunch that Hagrid's slightly odd invitation this time always felt very strange. We are almost there, Master, be careful. As soon as Iris's voice rang out, Rhys felt the dragon suddenly slam into him. The huge sense of drop made Aris feel like he was flying, which was very exciting. This is 10 or even 100 times more exciting than any other roller coaster. Luna. Aris was originally worried that Luna would not be able to bear it, but when he turned around, he found that the girl's eyes were shining brightly, and she opened her hands, looking very happy. Woohoo! The clear female voice flashed across the sky and into the distance. At this moment, Luna in front of him might be the freest and most unrestrained one. Brother, I love Elise so much, I love flying so much, and I love you so much. Excited Luna screamed wildly and shouted at the vast sky. Seeing this scene, a smile appeared on Aris's face. He gently stroked the girl's hair and murmured, I like Luna too. I like her very much. What? The girl suddenly turned her head. Nothing. Aris quickly looked down. I said, get ready, it's time to land. After a fierce dive, Iris landed steadily in an open space on the edge of the forbidden forest of Hogwarts. It was very quiet around, without any sound. There was no light in Hagrid's cabin in the distance, and everything seemed unusual. What the hell happened? Aris muttered. Normally at this time, Hagrid should be in the cabin. It's not the time for patrolling the forbidden forest, right? Brother, how about we go to the castle first? Luna suggested. She glanced into the depths of the forbidden forest, a hint of curiosity flashing in her eyes. Okay, let's go back to the castle first. Aris nodded. He noticed Luna's gaze towards the forbidden forest and said with a smile, I'll take you there when I have time. There is a centaur tribe deep in the forbidden forest that I have a good relationship with, and Iris has a treasure house there. Really? Luna's eyes lit up. Of course. Aris nodded. Okay, thank you brother. The two reached an agreement and walked quickly towards the castle. There was no student in the silent castle. Hogwarts had not officially started yet and they had not arrived yet. The whole castle seemed quiet, with only the occasional ghosts passing by making some noise. But the appearance of ghosts made the castle look even more eerie. Brother, there seems to be no one here. Luna couldn't help but reach out and grab the corner of Aris' clothes. This weird and eerie atmosphere obviously frightened the little girl. She held Aris tightly, unwilling to let go for a moment. Don't be afraid, it's safe inside the castle. These ghosts won't have any ill will towards the little wizard. At most, only the turtle will play some mischief. But with his brother here, he won't dare to act recklessly. Aris comforted Luna while observing the situation inside the castle. Well. With Aris's comfort, Luna was obviously more at ease. When he looked around the castle, he was no longer afraid, but instead had a hint of curiosity. Soon, the two arrived at the castle's auditorium. At this time, the entire auditorium was silent and all the lights were off. Aris hardly encountered this kind of situation last semester. Most of the time, some lights are left on in the school auditorium, or at least not all of them are turned off. This is also an old tradition of Hogwarts. Provide lighting for some little wizards who wander around at night. But now, all the lights in the auditorium are off. Not a single one was left. At this time, Aris felt that things might really be a little troublesome. Chapter 186. Brother, what should we do now? Looking at the dark auditorium in front of her, Luna asked in a low voice. In the darkness, Aris's eyes flashed a light. Then, a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. It's okay, wait till I turn on the light. Just as Aris finished speaking, a bright light suddenly flashed in front of the auditorium. Then, the candles in the auditorium were lit one by one, starting from the front and spreading to the main entrance. Dumbledore appeared in the center of the teacher's seat. Welcome back, Aris. The silver-haired old wizard smiled, maintaining an elegant and calm smile. Principal, what are you doing? Although Aris already had some guesses in his mind, he pretended nothing had happened and asked blankly. Well, it's a little surprise. Dumbledore shrugged. Then, colorful ribbons and sparks suddenly fell from the sky above the auditorium, and figures began to appear on both sides of the auditorium. Hagrid, Harry, Ronald, Hermione, Autumn. Anthony and Terry, who were close friends of Aris and Ravenclaw, also showed up. Besides these 30, many of Aris's fans came from the 4 major colleges. He even saw Malfoy show up at Slytherin College. Happy birthday, Reese! Finally, Hagrid pushed out a huge cake from nowhere. The cake was more than 1 meter high and was placed on a cart, but it was still a little small under Hagrid's huge body. But for ordinary people, it was definitely a giant cake. Hagrid's 2 plates, Henry and Shirley's, arrived early without knowing when. Aris looked at it and felt it was outrageous. These 2 people clearly sent them out, but they were not faster than Longfei. But soon, Aris felt relieved. Because this is the magical world, and there are things like port keys. Judging from the situation today, they must have been preparing for a long time. Otherwise it would be impossible to get so many people together. Aris suddenly had an indescribable feeling in his heart. This is his 2nd birthday since he came into this world. The last birthday was held in Luna's Black Building. Although there weren't many people, it was still very warm. Now, just 1 year has passed, the number of people celebrating his birthday has increased dozens of times. This feeling was really good. Looking at the smiling and blessing faces in front of him, Aris' eyes had turned slightly red without him even noticing. Thank you. Thank you everyone. Aris really wanted to know whose idea this was. He still doesn't know who arranged all this. Professor Dumbledore said that you are an orphan with no relatives, so you may feel lonely on your birthday. At this time, Hagrid suddenly leaned over to Aris's ear and whispered, so, he organized this birthday party. Of course, Harry and your friends have also come up with a lot of ideas. We originally wanted to go to Shafik Castle together today, but Luna suggested that we give you a surprise. And it will definitely be more memorable to celebrate your birthday in the castle than in Hogwarts. Luna. Aris was stunned for a moment, then turned to look at the little girl who had performed superbly from beginning to end. This little girl actually knew from the beginning that this was a surprise. But her performance along the way, she really deserves an Oscar. It's just perfect. Even he didn't see any flaws at all. If he hadn't sensed some strange atmosphere and a slight smell of cream after entering the auditorium. He really thought that something happened in Hogwarts. Thank you. Aris looked at everyone again and bowed deeply. Thank you all for giving me such a special birthday. At this time, all the little wizards came to Aris and excitedly told him about the interesting things that happened before preparing for the birthday party, such as Harry almost missed the departure time of the Hogwarts special train, because yesterday's special train was temporarily open, so it was different from the usual school start time. Also, because of driving a speeding car, both Thorn and the Weasley twins were grounded for 10 months. However, they still sneaked out and attended the birthday party. Are you kidding? How could Fred and George miss such a meaningful and interesting thing? As for Ronald, since it was Aris' birthday, he certainly couldn't miss it. Aris, blow out the candles. Hermione and Chu parted the crowd and came to Aris with a smile on their faces. Behind them, a huge cake was taller than they were. Happy birthday, brother. Luna stuck out her tongue playfully. Well, let me blow out the candles. Aris touched the little girl's hair and then walked to the huge cake. Come on, everyone. This cake is too big. Aris' proposal was agreed by everyone. With the countdown of 3, 2, 1, all the candles on the cake were blown out. Then let the wildness begin. Kiazu suddenly laughed, grabbed a piece of cake and smeared it directly on Aris' face. FK, you have no moral principles and are trying to sneak attack me. Aris subconsciously dodged backwards, but disappeared in an instant. Where are the people? George paused and looked around in surprise. This guy can even apparate. No, you can't apparate inside the castle. Damn it, who cares about this now? Hurry up and find that guy. I will definitely smear this cake on his face. Aris, come out. A roar sounded in the auditorium. Soon after, more and more shouts spread around. 180 didn't know who started it first, but a piece of cake suddenly flew over and hit George in the face. This drove George completely crazy. He took 2 handfuls of cake and started an indiscriminate attack. The entire auditorium was immersed in a sea of joy. In a corner, Aris licked the cream on his hands and a triumphant smile appeared on his face. The cake that just hit George was naturally thrown by him. Otherwise, if these guys really found him, he would definitely turn into a human-shaped cake tonight. Then his character would be ruined. It's good like this now, they have fun and I can escape. Very good. The brothers George and Fred are indeed natural targets of hatred. It's most appropriate for them to take the lead in this kind of occasion. Why don't you play with them? At this moment, a voice that sounded like a smile came from my ear. Dumbledore looked at Aris, who was watching the show on the side, and shook his head in amusement. Professor, I thought you wouldn't be interested in such childish play. Aris looked at the silver-haired old wizard helplessly. Well, I'm really not interested, so how about we talk somewhere else? Yet. Aris nodded slightly. He looked at Dumbledore and felt that although the old wizard had a smile on his face, there was always a hint of worry in his eyes. I don't know why. Chapter 187. How was it? Did you have a good time this summer? In the headmaster's office, Dumbledore waved his wand, made a cup of black tea for Aris, and asked with a smile. It's okay, I feel my life is quite fulfilling. Aris also smiled. I heard that the manor butler you developed has been launched on the market, and it's selling quite well. Dumbledore looked at the boy thoughtfully. Yes. Aris nodded slightly and did not deny it. My old friend Nicholas Flamel has praised your alchemical talent to me more than once, but it seems he wasn't really praising you. Dumbledore looked at Alex with some emotion and said with relief, although I have overestimated your talent as much as possible, it seems that your performance still surprises me now. Professor, you're too kind. Aris smiled and shook his head. Okay, that's enough of the compliments. Dumbledore's expression gradually became serious, and he looked at Aris and continued, after the end of last semester, you talked to me about some things about Voldemort, and I've always kept it in mind. Now it seems that perhaps you are right. Dumbledore waved his hand again, and the wand controlled a box to fly onto the table in front of Aris. What is this? Aris looked at the box in front of him, and a thought suddenly flashed through his mind. This silver-haired old principal must have been busy during the summer vacation. He felt a strong scent of dark magic from the box in front of him. He was very familiar with that scent, which was exactly the same as the scent of dark magic in Tom Riddle's diary. It's a Horcrux. And it's Voldemort's Horcrux. But something seems wrong. Although the dark magic aura of this Horcrux is very strong, it does not contain the aura of Voldemort's soul, or it is not pure enough like a fake one. Is this a fake Horcrux? Thinking of this, Aris's eyes involuntarily turned to Dumbledore's left hand. He remembered that there was a plot in the original book where Dumbledore's left hand was injured by a fake Horcrux, and it was the injury to his left hand that cost the life of this respected old wizard. But it shouldn't be the right time now, right? Aris frowned. He naturally didn't want Dumbledore to die for this reason. Frankly speaking, the old wizard was really protective of himself in school. So Alex definitely didn't want him to make such a miserable sacrifice like in the original novel. You should have felt it, right? Dumbledore looked at Aris seriously, then looked at the box on the table. This box is full of the breath of dark magic. Didn't you ask me about the Horcrux before? I can tell you with certainty. Dumbledore's tone became more and more serious. There is a Horcrux in this box, although this Horcrux is a fake. Where did you find this? Aris's brows were still tightly frowned. Whose Horcrux is this? Although he already had a guess in his mind, Yalai still asked. He had just seen Dumbledore's left hand, and there was no sign of corrosion by dark magic as he expected. In other words, Dumbledore was still safe and not injured so far. This made him feel relieved, but also made him a little confused. Could it be that this box does not contain Voldemort's Horcrux? I found this box while investigating Voldemort's Horcruxes. Inside was a pendant. I thought it was Voldemort's Horcrux, but now it has been confirmed that it is just a fake, a fake. Speaking of which, I have to thank you for helping me better perceive the elements, so I was able to find the trap so quickly. Otherwise, I would have paid a heavy price to destroy this thing. Hearing this, Aris' eyes lit up slightly and heaved a sigh of relief. I see. Dumbledore's strength has improved a lot now, even Aris is not sure what level this old wizard is now. What is certain is that he has definitely become much stronger. After he began to study elemental magic, Alex could clearly feel that Dumbledore's aura was becoming stronger day by day, and that kind of magical ability made him deeply afraid. Fortunately, because of this, he was able to avoid the trap of a fake wedding date as in the original book, which is undoubtedly good news. I'm glad you're okay. It's actually not difficult to destroy this thing. There's no need to hurt yourself to destroy it. After hearing what Alex said, Dumbledore's eyes lit up slightly and asked, do you know how to destroy it? In fact, it's not a way to destroy this fake thing, but a way to destroy the real Horcrux. Aris said calmly. This box is just a fake Horcrux. There is no point in destroying it. You just need to find a safe place and seal it up if you really can't destroy it. As for the real Horcrux, since it involves the soul, it is very difficult to destroy it, but it is not impossible. Horcruxes have very powerful protective magic. Ordinary destruction methods are completely ineffective. Therefore, we must use extremely powerful weapons that are immune to most magical protections. As far as I know, the school has such a thing. He should belong in Gryffindor. Gryffindor. Dumbledore's eyes lit up as if he remembered something, and he said, Gryffindor sword. That's right. Aris nodded and said with a smile, it's the famous Gryffindor sword. Well, yes, this is indeed a good idea. Dumbledore nodded, and a smile appeared on his face. Very good, it seems you already know what I mean. That's right, Voldemort has a backup plan, and there is definitely more than one. This summer I sorted out a lot of previously forgotten information about the king, and finally came to a conclusion that the child Tom Reed, also known as Voldemort, left behind at least 7 Horcruxes. The creation of these Horcruxes spanned his entire life, so it would undoubtedly be very difficult to find them all, but we have to make the bow that way. Do you understand? Aris. The silver-haired old wizard looked at the boy very seriously, with solemnity and seriousness in his eyes. I understand. Aris nodded slightly, but soon a smile appeared on his face again. In fact, I had already anticipated this, and I already knew the whereabouts of a Horcrux. Speaking of which, this is quite interesting. Professor, are you interested in listening? Hearing this, Dumbledore's eyes suddenly lit up, of course. He walked quickly to Aris, with an anxious look in his eyes. Obviously they take this matter very seriously. Chapter 188. Brother, where have you been? When Aris came out of the principal's office, it was already around 8 or 9 in the evening. He had just returned to the Ravenclaw lounge when he saw Luna at the door. Luna has not been sorted yet and is currently just temporarily living in the Ravenclaw lounge. Aris was the only one who knew that this little girl would eventually belong here, but looking at Luna's mood now, she seemed a little uneasy. Why haven't you rested yet? The professors should have arranged a room for you, right? Aris looked at the obviously nervous, or rather uneasy little girl and asked softly. I'm a little worried. Luna lowered her head and said in a low voice. What are you worried about? Aris reached out and touched the little girl's hair, asking gently. What if I'm sorted into Slytherin? Luna finally looked up at Aris. That doesn't matter. Slytherin has produced many great wizards. Aris comforted her. When he saw that Luna still looked a little uneasy, he suddenly changed his tone. But if you really don't want to go there, the Sorting Hat will consider your opinion. Really? Of course it's true. When I was sorted, the Hat hesitated for a long time about where to sort me. In the end, I chose Ravenclaw. Aris said with a smile. Hearing this, Luna's eyes suddenly lit up and a smile finally appeared on her face. 353 I know, brother. The little girl walked up to Aris and hugged him gently, then turned and hurried into the Ravenclaw lounge. I'm going to rest now, brother, you should go to bed early too. Well, good night. Good night. The little girl quickly disappeared behind the eagle-shaped copper ring, and then Yingrace also walked into the lounge with a smile. Tomorrow is the official opening day of Hogwarts, and the first-year students will also arrive at the school on the Hogwarts special train tomorrow. Of course there are other senior students. Alex never thought that he would come to Hogwarts before school started. It must be said that this was a very novel experience. Sitting in front of the window, looking at the watery night outside, the bright moonlight, the earth and the sky seemed to be shrouded in a layer of mysterious mist, full of unknown haziness. Aris watched quietly for a long time until he felt sleepy. No words were spoken that night. Aris, get up quickly, let's go to the auditorium, today is the first day of school. A faint sound came from outside the door, and Aris, who had slept until dawn, slowly opened his eyes. He slept very comfortably that night and didn't even have a dream. Maybe it was because of the safe atmosphere of the school, or maybe he was really tired this summer. The first day of school. Aris propped himself up with his hands and glanced at the dormitory door. The first day of school, is there anything special? Why are they so excited? After getting up slowly and washing up, Aris walked out of the dormitory and headed towards the auditorium. Brother, good morning. Then he met Luna in the lounge. It was obvious that the little girl was waiting for him. Have you been waiting for a long time? No, I just came down too. Let's go to the Great Hall to eat. The breakfast at Hogwarts is very rich. Luna had a smile on her face, and was obviously very happy, as if she was full of curiosity and anticipation for everything in the future. Brother, I'm wondering if I should go to the station to meet up with the other first-year wizards and walk around the Black Lake. Why? Aris was a little surprised. Luna actually had such an idea. I heard that this is a tradition for freshmen at Hogwarts. Every young wizard who comes here has to cross the Black Lake. It is said that the 4 founders of the school crossed this way. After hearing this, Aris understood a little bit. He smiled and said, if you want to go, of course you can. Well, I think it should be a good experience. The two of them walked through the corridor and soon arrived at the auditorium. There were not many people in the auditorium at this time. After all, most of the students had not arrived at school yet. Now, the people in the auditorium were basically those who attended the birthday party last night. They were the group that had the best relationship with Alex. Good morning, Aris. Good morning, Hermione. Dabba, good morning. Everyone said good morning to each other with smiles on their faces. At this moment, Aris suddenly felt that perhaps Hogwarts was his real home. Shafik Castle was so deserted that he often felt that it was not a home, but just a place to stay. Have you heard? This year's defense against the dark arts professor is very famous. At this time, Fred, who was opposite Aris, suddenly said mysteriously. Gilderoy Lockhart. Harry turned his head and asked curiously. Yes, from this year's textbooks, everyone should be able to imagine what a narcissistic guy he is. He actually used the entire set of books he published as this year's textbooks. The most outrageous thing is these teaching materials, which are basically storybooks. What on earth is he thinking? I don't understand this operation at all. I don't understand it either. Ronald shrugged, but what is certain is that some people admire him very much. At this moment, his eyes involuntarily turned to Hermione, Chu and other girls. When they mentioned Professor Lockhart, the girls started discussing with shining eyes. Most of the discussion was about Professor Lockhart's appearance and the winner of a certain award for the most charming smile reported in the Daily Prophet. Yes, the winner is Lockhart. It is said that he is also the object of admiration of many witches in the wizarding world, a true friend of women. My mother was particularly obsessed with him. When she talked about Professor Lockhart, her whole face turned red and her body was like crawling with bugs. She kept squirming. It was so strange. Ronald shook his head in confusion. Listening to everyone's discussion, Aris smiled and said, I heard that there is a strange curse in Hogwarts. No professor of defense against the dark arts can be re-elected for more than 1 year. Is that true? There is indeed such a rumor, and it seems to be true. George nodded seriously, so what do you want to say? Well, I wonder how Professor Quirrell will leave this school. Aris shrugged indifferently. By the way, let's talk about the map later. Aris suddenly lowered his voice and winked at the Weasley twins. I really figured it out. The twins' eyes lit up. They naturally knew what Aris was talking about. A new school year, a new place for students to live, maps will definitely sell like hotcakes during the start of school. If Aris can really replicate the fire map, even if it is just a semi-finished product, there will definitely be a market for it. Let's talk about it later. Aris said with a smile as everyone around him looked at him. Clear. George and Fred nodded mysteriously, which made the people around them even more curious. They seemed to be doing something big. Chapter 189. Ahem. Suddenly a cough came from behind the little wizards. Aris subconsciously stopped the topic, and like everyone else, turned to look in the direction where the coughing sound came from. The cough was obviously intentional, the man was trying to alert the little wizards of his arrival. It's Professor Lockhart. Someone let out a low cry, and then all the little wizards stopped talking, and the entire garden table fell into an eerie silence. The professor they were discussing just now suddenly appeared behind them. The guilty feeling made all the young wizards afraid to speak, and they carefully looked at the suddenly appeared, Gilderoy Lockhart. I seemed to hear someone discussing me just now, was that right? Gilderoy Lockhart's voice was a little oppressive, and his eyes slowly swept over the young wizards. At this moment, Aris's eyes moved slightly, and a hint of doubt appeared in his eyes, as if he had discovered something. He felt that the Lockhart in front of him seemed different from what he had imagined, and also somewhat different from the character in the original book. He didn't know if it was an illusion, but facing the person in front of him, he had a vague feeling of familiarity. This feeling was very strange, as Aris had never met Professor Lockhart before. "Why aren't you talking? Are you scared by my appearance?" Lockhart looked at the young wizards indifferently, his tone became heavier, and the sense of oppression became more obvious. "Sorry, Professor Lockhart." Aris' voice suddenly rang out, "We were just discussing you because there is a new defense against the dark arts professor at the school, and we are all a little curious and wondering what kind of person you are." Aris looked at Gilderoy Lockhart, as if observing, and as if testing. Gilderoy Lockhart looked at Aris, and a faint smile suddenly appeared on the corner of his mouth. He looked at Aris with interest and asked, "Who are you? Can you tell me your name?" "Of course, Professor." Aris still looked at Lockhart and smiled, "I'm Aris, Aris Shafik. A sophomore at Ravenclaw Academy." "Well, not bad." Gilderoy Lockhart looked at Aris meaningfully and said lightly, "I'll remember you." After saying that, he turned around and left the auditorium, leaving the stunned little wizards looking at each other in bewilderment. This professor's temperament, why do I feel like I'm facing a combination of Professor Snape and Professor Dumbledore? It's full of oppression, and also gives people a feeling of being unfathomable. Ronald suddenly spoke, and said in a low voice with a somewhat strange expression. "I feel the same way, as if I'm facing an evil version of Professor Dumbledore." Hermione's voice followed, "This feeling is so weird. Why did he suddenly appear? Shouldn't the professors be on the Hogwarts Express at this time? He arrived at school early. Does anyone know when he came to school? Yesterday. Strange, I didn't see him last night." Voices rang out again, the Weasley twins and Ronald and the others started chatting in low voices, and the topic was of course still about Lockhart. Only Aris looked thoughtfully at the direction where Lockhart left, with a slightly frowned brow. He always felt that something was wrong. This Professor Lockhart was completely different from the one he remembered as the one who loved to show off, act cool, and think of himself as a gentleman. This feeling unconsciously emerged in his heart the first time he saw Lockhart. He even wondered, could it be that the Lockhart in this world is not the same person as the Lockhart in the original book? Or is this a bug that is different from the character setting in the original work? Aris was secretly on guard in his heart, but since it was only their first meeting, he couldn't get much information. But he believed that things would eventually be figured out, and there would always be an answer to what was going on with this Lockhart who was somewhat different from the original. "Aris, are you going to the lab in the room of requirement?" When Aris left the hall, Hermione chased after him. "Well, what's the matter?" Aris slowed down and let the little witch behind him catch up, with a hint of confusion on his face. Just now they seemed to have agreed to go to the station to see this year's new students and the special way for the second graders to enter the school. After entering the second grade, Harry Potter and Ronald's mentality has completely changed. After all, they are old students of the school, and they also want to try the old students' way of entering the school. Although this matter is boring, Aris can understand it. As a senior, it is a wonderful feeling to see his juniors coming to this new magical world just like they did when they were young. But Hermione did not go with them to experience this novel feeling. "I have a question for you." Hermione looked at Aris with a longing look, with a hint of expectation in her eyes. This expression and demeanor was so cute that Aris was slightly stunned. "What's the problem?" Aris coughed lightly, then turned around and continued walking forward. Hermione hurriedly followed. "In fact, it should be very simple for you. It's about the fusion of elements. I always feel that when the master casts fire spells, the fire element can play a very important role. But every time I want to integrate the fire element into the fire spell, I always feel that it is not done thoroughly. It's like there's a force restricting me from completing this fusion. I think if I can solve this problem, my spell casting ability will become stronger, and the power of magic will become stronger." Hermione quickly described her problem, then looked at Aris with a slightly frown. "You know what's going on, right?" Aris' eyes showed a hint of surprise, then he stopped and looked at Hermione. "Elemental fusion barrier?" Hermione actually noticed this problem herself. She is indeed a top student in Hogwarts. In fact, Aris had realized this problem a long time ago. There is indeed some kind of integration bottleneck between elemental magic and the existing spell system, or it can be said that there is an incompatibility between the two systems. The elemental magic system and the spell magic system are two completely different magic systems. The spell magic system pays more attention to the power of idealism. The elemental magic system, on the other hand, places more emphasis on the perception and affinity of elements. The two have something in common, but they are also essentially different. Therefore, integrating elements into the spell system can indeed enhance the power of spell magic. But this kind of improvement also has bottlenecks. This was also a step that Dumbledore had never been able to take. If this bottleneck did not exist, with Dumbledore's strength and talent, he might have already comprehended the true power of elemental magic. Facing Hermione's expectant eyes, Reese smiled. He said, "This question is a bit complicated. If you really want to know, follow me." Having said that, Aris turned around again and continued walking towards the room of requirement. Of course Hermione followed closely. Chapter 190. Element Fusion Barrier. In the laboratory of the room of requirement, Hermione looked at Aris in confusion. What is that? To put it simply, your elemental affinity is at a bottleneck. You can no longer break through it using ordinary meditation methods. You need time to accumulate experience to break through that bottleneck little by little. Before this, it was difficult for the power of the fusion of elements and spells to increase as quickly as before. Aris explained briefly. Then what should I do now? Is there a better way to break through this bottleneck? Hermione frowned slightly. There is still a way. Aris thought for a moment and said, we can use some external help, such as elemental energy crystals, but that kind of thing seems to be very rare in this world. Aris had only drawn some energy crystals during the system lottery, and it seemed that there was no such thing in this world. That is also the material needed for the eye and formation of the magic array. Aris has been looking for a replacement energy stone. However, up to now, there is still not much clue about replacement materials. In other words, if you want elemental energy crystals now, you can only draw them from the system. This results in a small quantity and non-mass production. This is also the biggest problem in promoting magic circles. Otherwise, according to Aris's idea, the magic circle would have been promoted long ago. At least the teleportation magic circle can be set up in more places, making long-distance travel more convenient. Power crystal. Hermione muttered. She naturally knew what energy crystals were. She had seen quite a few when Aris was setting up magic circles. Moreover, she had used energy crystals to practice her magic control before, so she was not unfamiliar with it. Aris, have you solved your element fusion problem? Hermione was silent for a moment and suddenly asked again. Me? Aris was stunned for a moment, then smiled and shook his head. I don't have that problem. Why? Hermione's eyes widened. Because my method of practicing elemental magic is different from yours, and I have never thought of integrating elemental magic with spells. For me, there is no bottleneck between these two systems. If you must explain, you can think of it as dual cultivation. I have always been practicing both the elemental magic system and the spell system. Hermione looked at Aris with a confused look on her face, her brows still slightly furrowed, as if she understood a little, but also didn't quite understand. Okay, for now you should just focus on improving your elemental perception. When your affinity with elemental energy changes from quantitative to qualitative, your problem will be solved naturally. At least this door has been opened to you, so you don't have to worry about it closing again. After saying that, Aris turned around and walked towards the magic circle research area at the innermost part of the laboratory. Hermione stood there, silent for a moment. Then, nothing more was said. He walked silently to the perception magic circle at the side and sat down cross-legged. Start to follow Aris's instructions and sense the elemental energy. Moss, how is the research on the Philosopher's Stone going? In the core research area of the magic circle, Aris turned on the magic circle central control system, and then the surrounding magic circles suddenly emitted a faint light. On a platform in front of Aris, a three-dimensional projection of a castle structure also appeared. In 3 days at most, the analysis of the Philosopher's Stone will be completed. Soon, Moss's virtual projection appeared in front of Aris, and the pleasant voice seemed to come from all directions. The progress is still too slow. Aris sighed. Even Moss took nearly 2 months to analyze the Philosopher's Stone. If Aris hadn't obtained some information about the Philosopher's Stone from Nicholas Flamel during this period, the time might have been even longer. It has to be said that this is the most advanced alchemical creation in the world, and its technical content and magical craftsmanship are top-notch. Still can't underestimate it. At this moment, Aris realized even more profoundly the strength of the alchemist master, Nick Flamel. Since the Philosopher's Stone has not been fully analyzed yet, let's take a look at the castle first. Since gaining control of Hogwarts Castle, Aris has not studied it carefully. I was away during the previous summer vacation and didn't have the chance. By this time, back at the castle, he had already had this idea. Looking at the three-dimensional projection of Hogwarts Castle in front of him, Aris waved his hands lightly, and a part of the projection began to enlarge as if controlled by a pair of big hands, and a very clear three-dimensional composition of corridors and classrooms appeared. Just like the future black technology projection, it can only control the system, 0 under Moss's improvement. The magic array here has been developed to the limit of what Aris can understand now. More than a dozen different magic arrays have formed one array core after another, forming an intelligent composite magic array system. It can be said that the magic matrix here at this moment is equivalent to the intelligent operating system of the future world. This is the potions classroom. Charms classroom. Snape's office. Also, this place should be the freezing room with the basilisk in the original book, right? The castle's drainage channels are really complicated, like an underground maze. With today's construction technology, it is possible to build a huge castle with such complete facilities and countless secret rooms and hidden spaces. The four founders of Hogwarts, he is truly a talent. A low murmur came out of Aris's mouth. He kept studying the three-dimensional projection of the castle in front of him, looking for the secrets inside the castle. This feeling gives Aris a sense of excitement of solving puzzles and exploring, and he is a great fan of it. Time passes by little. In the blink of an eye, 2 hours passed without Aris even realizing it. Hey, this is the Defense Against the Dark Arts classroom, A&D. Lockhart's office. Aris stretched out his hand and zoomed in on a certain part of the castle, muttering as he looked at an area. However, at this moment, there was a hint of doubt in Aris' eyes. Why does something feel a little off in 4.0? Looking at the small office behind the Defense Against the Dark Arts classroom, Aris couldn't help but put his hand on his chin and started thinking. There seems to be nothing wrong with this space, but something is wrong, something is definitely wrong. On this 3D projection model, information from other places can be clearly seen, even Dumbledore's office is no exception. Even Dumbledore's aura in the office can be captured. But everything in this room seems to be blocked. Even the rules of Hogwarts can't detect this place. This is a huge problem. Who on earth is hiding the situation here? Aris's gaze gradually became serious, and a hint of solemnity appeared in his eyes. Chapter 191. After learning that there was something wrong with the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher's office, Aris had been feeling curious and vaguely uneasy. He really didn't like this feeling of being out of control, so he decided to find out. The current Defense Against the Dark Arts professor is Lockhart. Does that mean the abnormality in that office is most likely caused by him? But, according to the original book, that guy doesn't seem to have any special abilities. How did he manage to block off an entire area in Hogwarts? You have to know that even other professors at Hogwarts can't do this kind of thing. If there is anyone who can do it, it's probably only Dumbledore. Aris had previously wondered if Dumbledore had shielded the Defense Against the Dark Arts classroom and office, but now that seemed unlikely. The position of Defense Against the Dark Arts professor is the one that is most prone to problems in Hogwarts. In previous years, Defense Against the Dark Arts teachers could only serve for 1 academic year and would be unable to continue in the position due to various accidents. So it's normal for Dumbledore to pay special attention to the Defense Against the Dark Arts professor, but it's impossible to block that office. You know, even 30Aris couldn't check the situation there, but he had already controlled the power of the rules of the entire Hogwarts. In other words, no one in the entire Hogwarts can clearly know what is happening in that office. Even if Voldemort appeared there, no one would be able to detect it. In Dumbledore's opinion, this matter is definitely a huge security risk. So the person who blocked that office couldn't be him. Since it's not him, there can only be another possibility. Voldemort entered this school in another way, or maybe it was really Lockhart. Because there are too few clues, Aris has no way to confirm it now, but it is not difficult to confirm this matter. At this time, Aris already had an idea in mind and was walking towards the Defense Against the Dark Arts classroom. Aris, where are you going? At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded behind him. It was Harry and Ronald. What's up? I'm on my way to the Defense Against the Dark Arts classroom. Aris replied with a smile. Look, didn't we form a defense against the Dark Arts Club last year? This year Hermione felt it was necessary to expand the scale, so she let us serve as deputy ministers. We are discussing the time for the first event. It just so happens that a new defense against the Dark Arts professor has arrived at the school, and we are going to invite him to join us. And we have come up with a very good idea. If we combine magic teaching and dueling together, it will definitely interest all the students in the school. This idea has also been approved by Professor McGonagall, and perhaps Hermione has also agreed. We will arrange it right away. Harry quickly explained the situation to Aris. So, what do you need me to do? Aris looked at Harry in confusion. He talked to Ronald for a long time, but it seemed that he didn't get to the point. Defense against the Dark Arts Club. Although he was temporarily the head of the club, Hermione was in charge of all these matters. From the moment the club was formed, he said that he would only attend specific affairs from time to time and would not participate. This club requires too much energy, and Aris doesn't want to waste time on it. Besides, he also felt that it was really boring to play with these kids all day. With this time, he might as well study more elemental magic and magic circles. However, since it has been decided to promote elemental magic in Hogwarts and this club plays a very important role, Aris usually will not refuse to participate if Hermione has any activities. We want you to attend the first event because you are famous enough and you are the only one who can dominate the place. Harry finally told Aris the purpose of their visit, and both of them looked a little embarrassed, but still looked at Aris firmly. It's just this matter, so there shouldn't be any problem. Alex thought about it and nodded slightly. At the end of last semester, he held 2 events and spread the basic concepts of the elemental magic system. The effects of those 2 activities were much better than he expected. If there were more such activities, magic would be able to spread faster in Hogwarts. By then, he will be one step closer to his goal. The time when elemental magic will regain its glory in this world is getting closer and closer. In fact, we have another request. At this time Harry seemed to have mustered up the courage and said quickly. Anything else? Aris looked at Harry Potter and asked with a frown. You don't have to be too nervous. Just tell me if you have anything to say. Aris was a little helpless. He found that after a summer vacation, Harry Potter and Ron seemed to be in awe of him. The feeling of getting along with a few people is completely different from that in the first grade. It's as if these guys have grown up and matured after a summer vacation, so they have some concerns. But to Aris, their attitude made them uncomfortable. This may be a little difficult for you, so we are a little embarrassed. Harry mustered up his courage, looked up at Aris, and continued, we would like to invite you to a duel with Professor Lockhart. This duel will be watched by many people. It will be a huge challenge for both you and Professor Lockhart. Especially if you want to deal with a professor in public, this is not an easy task, so you must think it over carefully. If you really can't do it. Harry was thinking about how to convince her when Bingley's voice suddenly rang out. No problem, just make the arrangements. Of course, if you refuse I won't. Harry Potter spoke subconsciously, but realized something was wrong the next second. You agree? He stared at Aris with eyes wide open in surprise, seemingly unable to believe it. You are dealing with a professor, are you sure? We originally thought of inviting Professor Snape and Professor Lockhart to a duel, but Hermione said that the effect would be better if you were there, so I came to you with a try-it attitude. Harry obviously didn't hold out much hope, but now, Aris actually agreed. Not only him, Ronald also found it a little unbelievable. So, Aris is still the strongest. If you are strong enough, you will be fearless. The two watched Aris slowly become relieved from his initial surprise, with smiles appearing on their faces. Well, if there's nothing else, I'm going to go to Professor Lockhart first. Aris shrugged and didn't take the flattery from the two people seriously. One more thing. If it's not too much trouble, please tell Professor Lockhart about the duel. I don't think he will refuse. Harry added quickly. Aris just turned around, paused slightly, and then waved behind him. No. He didn't know whether Lockhart would accept this, but if the event was to go on, a professor had to be present. This is a good opportunity to test out some of the weird professors around me. Chapter 192. Boom boom boom. Aris raised his hand and knocked on the door of the Defense Against the Dark Arts classroom office. It was very quiet inside, without any sound coming out, until Aris knocked for the third time, and then a voice came out from inside. Come in. The voice was very flat, with an indescribable feeling, like indifference. Then, the office door opened automatically, and a figure stood behind the door, looking at Aris quietly. After seeing the boy clearly, Lockhart was obviously stunned for a moment, then frowned slightly. "It's you, what are you doing here?" He looked a little surprised. "I want to talk to the professor about something. Do you have time?" Aris said with a smile on his face and a calm tone. Now he was becoming more and more curious about Professor Lockhart in front of him. The feeling this person gave him was completely different from the feeling he had for the defense against the dark arts professor in the original book. It would not be an exaggeration to even say that they are two completely different people. However, after Lockhart saw Aris, a smile inexplicably appeared on his face, and then he enthusiastically invited the boy into the office. "We just got here and haven't had time to decorate yet. Please sit down first. I'll make you a cup of tea." Lockhart pulled out his wand and waved it gently, and the tea set on the table naturally floated up. Some tea leaves floated out of the tea can next to it and entered the teapot. Then the kettle on the other side automatically emitted flames and began to boil water. This set of movements was smooth and there was no pause. Then a teacup floated in front of Aris, who had just sat down in front of the only 10 desks in the office. The teacup just fell in front of him, and it could be seen that the teacup had been specially cleaned and was very clean. Alex was somewhat surprised by this magical control, and his eyes became thoughtful. "This Professor Lockhart seems quite strong. Aris often saw Dumbledore doing this. The old wizard did this every time he made tea. He just waved his wand lightly and everything was done by himself. Aris often uses magic to make tea when she is at home, including some housework. But it is difficult for ordinary wizards to complete these spells so easily, and to release spells including levitation spell, cleansing spell, fire spell, etc. in an instant. To achieve this requires profound skills. He didn't think that a liar professor who was only good at the Oblivion spell could do this. He remembered that in the original book, when Lockhart treated Harry Potter's arm, he ended up crippling Harry's hand. If he was really so proficient in spells, there was no way he would do that in public. This made him even more confused. He narrowed his eyes slightly and looked carefully at the person in front of him, not knowing what he was thinking. "Okay, this black tea is good, you can try it, you should like it." The water in the kettle soon boiled, and Lockhart waved his wand gently again, and the hot water poured into the teapot, and a rich aroma of black tea immediately wafted out. The smell startled Aris again, and then he looked at Lockhart with an even stranger gaze. "What's wrong? Is there any problem?" Lockhart seemed to notice that something was wrong with the boy's expression and asked. His tone was still calm, and it looked like he was just asking casually, "Have you eaten?" There was absolutely no panic or subconscious vigilance that one should have when being questioned. "I was thinking that the aroma of this black tea seems very special, I seem to have smelled it somewhere." Aris picked up the teacup, took a sip, and then suddenly paused. "Well, you've had this kind of tea before." "Where?" Lockhart looked at the boy with interest, still smiling. It looked like he was watching a good show and was very interested in Reese's actions and expressions. "You're not pretending at all." Aris suddenly smiled bitterly and shook his head helplessly. At this moment, he was already 80% sure in his heart that the person in front of him was definitely not Gilderoy Lockhart in the original book. As for who it was, a figure had already emerged in his mind, but he felt that this matter was too unbelievable and absurd. He couldn't believe it. How could that person be here? This is the territory of Hogwarts, the greatest wizard alive today, Dumbledore. And the two were once mortal enemies. It stands to reason that he absolutely cannot be here, so Aris was not sure for a moment. "It seems you have discovered it after all. What should I do? Are you going to report me?" Lockhart leaned back, crossed his legs, and looked at the boy in front of him with a smile. "Senior Grindelwald, you shouldn't be here. If Professor Dumbledore finds out, you might be in big trouble." Aris said speechlessly. At this point he was certain that the man in front of him was Grindelwald, and there would be no surprises. This can be proven from his expression, movements, spellcasting ability, and just now, the black tea. What Aris is curious about now is how this big man whose magic ability is second only to Dumbledore is here. What is his purpose here? How did he trick Dumbledore into coming here in Lockhart's place? Also, he pretended to be Lockhart, so where was the real Lockhart? One question after another suddenly emerged in Aris' mind and kept circling. "How did you find out?" Grindelwald simply stopped pretending and waved his hand, removing the human body deformation spell on his face, restoring his original appearance. "It's you." Aris shook his head and looked at the old man in front of him speechlessly. "Gellert Grindelwald, the former Dark Lord. You came to Hogwarts to be a teacher? No matter how you look at it, this matter is absurd and unbelievable." However, the facts before Aris told him that he was not wrong. "Is there a problem? With my ability, am I not qualified to teach those brats? Or do you think I don't dare to come here?" Grindelwald looked at Aris. There was still a smile on her face, but her tone became a little arrogant. "First, let me answer your previous question. Your disguise is really poor, or even non-existent. You should at least pretend to be Lockhart. How can you be so sly as you are?" Aris looked at the old man in front of him tiredly and continued, "Then, I don't think you are unqualified to teach us. On the contrary, I think that with your ability, you are more than qualified to be a professor at Hogwarts. It can even be said that you are overqualified. But you should know what Hogwarts is. Professor Dumbledore will not allow you to stay here, and the parents of those students will definitely not allow you to stay here, right?" "Yes, then what?" Grindelwald still looked at Aris and smiled faintly, "So what? When do I need their permission to do something?" "Aris, okay, you're awesome, you're not afraid of anyone, you're the super devil, you have the final say." Alex didn't want to continue to worry about these issues. Whatever Grindelwald did was none of his business. If something really happened, with his abilities, he would definitely be able to escape from here safely. When will it be his turn to worry? "So, I'm actually still curious, what is your purpose in coming here?" Now, Aris was only curious about this question, and he quickly thought in his mind, would the appearance of Grindelwald have any impact on his future plans? Chapter 193. Remember the surprise I told you about before? One of them is to introduce you to my former followers. As for the second one, Grindelwald smiled at Alex. Being a professor at Hogwarts is the second surprise you mentioned. Aris widened his eyes, looking speechless. "Why? Isn't this a surprise?" Grindelwald frowned slightly. "This is clearly a shock." Alex held his forehead speechlessly. "You should know that countless people wanted to become my apprentice and learn magic from me. They all coveted my power, but at the same time they were in awe of me." Grindelwald's expression gradually became serious and he looked at Aris and said, "Perhaps you think that I am old and not as strong as before, so there is nothing I can teach you, right?" "That's not what I meant." Aris thought for a moment and sighed. "I just couldn't accept it for the moment. What's more, if Professor Dumbledore knew about this and knew that you came here for me, he would definitely be furious." "You seem to even respect Dumbledore." Grindelwald frowned again, and there seemed to be some inexplicable dissatisfaction in his eyes. "Of course, Professor Dumbledore helped me a lot at school, and he is a respectable man, isn't he?" Aris knew that Grindelwald might not like to hear these words, but he still told the truth. He didn't want to say bad things about Dumbledore because of Grindelwald. He is indeed a respectable person, as proven by many things in the past. On the contrary, I am a negative example. Grindelwald seemed to have thought of something and shook his head in self-mockery. "But don't worry, my decision to come here was made after careful consideration. It was not a spur-of-the-moment decision. I believe you should be able to understand." "What on earth are you?" Aris frowned, looking at the old man in front of him, feeling a little uncomfortable suddenly. He naturally knew that the reason why Grindelwald came to Hogwarts was probably largely because of him, otherwise he would never have given this to him as a surprise. "Don't think too much. I'm not here entirely because of you." At this time, Grindelwald smiled and shook his head. "You should know that my ability to predict the future is pretty good. I'm here because I saw it, and I need to be here." Grindelwald's tone was somewhat mysterious, and even his expression became unfathomable at this moment. "You see, you need to come here." Aris frowned, carefully considering the meaning of this sentence. "Yes, with your intelligence you should be able to guess what I mean. The world is about to change, and it all starts here. It starts at Hogwarts, so I came here. I can tell you for sure that these things have nothing to do with you. So there's no need for you to be so resistant to my existence. I said that I came to you to help you. Although I have selfish motives, our goals are the same." Grindelwald spoke very seriously and looked at Aris with a serious expression. "I understand." After a long while, Aris let out a sigh of relief. He looked at Grindelwald deeply, and then smiled. Welcome, Professor Grindelwald. Oh, no, from now on, I think I should call you Professor Lockhart. Yes, my current identity is Gilderoy Lockhart. Grindelwald also showed a smile on his face. But to be honest, your acting skills are really not that good. Aris looked at Grindelwald seriously and said, if you don't want Dumbledore to find out something unusual tomorrow, you'd better restrain your subconscious behavior a little bit, and the most important thing is your eyes. Boy, do you really think I can't act? Grindelwald looked at Aris with interest and said meaningfully. The reason I exposed myself in front of you was just because I wanted to have a good talk with you. I didn't want to hide my identity in front of you. Do you think you can find me so quickly? Of course I know you did it on purpose. Aris shrugged. In fact, he had figured out the matter since Grindelwald casually revealed his identity just now. Decades ago, Grindelwald hid in the U.S. Ministry of Magic and did so many great things without being discovered. It is conceivable how strong his ability to hide was. How could he be discovered so easily here? There is only one possibility. This old guy deliberately wanted to tell me his identity. I will keep your identity secret. Aris said helplessly, but you have to know that if Dumbledore finds anything unusual, just ask me directly. I won't lie to him. This is Aris' bottom line. You should know how much Professor Dumbledore values this school, and you should also know how much he feels about this place. If you do anything that is detrimental to the school, even I won't agree to it. Aris was determined. Grindelwald obviously saw it too, and smiled and shook his head. I think you are wrong. From the beginning to the end, I never came here to destroy or make trouble. I'm just trying to help you. That's all. Aris didn't say anything else. He looked at the old man in front of him, with many thoughts in his mind. He could tell that Grindelwald was not lying, but he was still a little wary of the old man Aris in front of him. Don't dare to trust completely. Perhaps this slight wariness would gradually disappear as they spent more time together, but now Aris knew clearly that he could not completely trust the old man in front of him. Well, now that we know it's you, the abnormality in this room is not surprising. Aris drank the water in the teacup and stood up. You knew I cast a spell in the room. Grindelwald looked at the boy with some surprise and stood up. Well, Shui Lang may sound a little arrogant, but I know everything about this castle, without exception. Alice looked at Grindelwald deeply, then turned and walked towards the door. Well, it does sound arrogant, this is Hogwarts. Grindelwald looked a little emotional, but he looked at Aris's back with admiration, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth without knowing when. That's right. At this time, Aris suddenly turned around, as if he just remembered something. There will be an event in a few days for the magic club that Harry and I formed. You may be invited to attend. You should be free, right? Grindelwald looked at Aris and smiled. Of course, if it's your invitation, I will definitely be there. We may need to fight then, so don't show any flaws. Aris reminded, then waved his hand. Goodbye, Professor Lockhart, I hope you have a good sleep tonight. Goodbye. Grindelwald watched Aris walk out of the office, then stretched slightly, waved his wand, and everything in the room suddenly flew gently. This scene seemed to be just like his mood at the moment, and he looked particularly happy. Chapter 194. Aris. Just as I walked out of the Defense Against the Dark Arts classroom, a voice came from behind me. Aris turned around and saw the Weasley twins sneaking towards them. It looks like he is hiding from someone. What are you doing? The pressure was a bit strange. These two fearless people were now acting like thieves. This is unreasonable. We have found a market for the map you gave us. Those first-year students are at the train station right now. They just arrived at school. I talked to some of them. They were a little worried about the complicated routes in the castle and were afraid of getting lost. As long as most people have such concerns, our maps will definitely sell well. George and Fred started talking to each other, which made Yuri's laugh. These two guys are really serious about selling maps. Maybe they are born to do this job and are always interested in strange things. Opening a magic joke shop is the most suitable for them. Isn't this great? I will rush to produce a batch of maps for sale in the next 2 days. I'll leave it to you. Aris said with a smile. No problem, but on us. George and Fred said in unison. By the way, Aris, there is one thing I still don't understand. George suddenly asked tentatively. The Shafik family doesn't seem to be short of money, right? Why are you doing this to us? Yeah, I don't understand either. Fred also looked at Aris. Yes, I am not short of money, but you are short of money, aren't you? Aris looked at the two with a smile and continued, haven't you always dreamed of opening a store of your own? If this deal is successful, you should be able to accumulate some startup capital. But what good will it do you? George asked again. We are friends, aren't we? Aris winked at him. Is it just because of this? George and Fred were obviously a little unconvinced, with confusion in their eyes. Or do you think I have any other intentions? Aris looked at the two of them meaningfully. Maybe we are overthinking it. George shook his head. He really couldn't guess what Aris's purpose could be. If you really just want to help us, then we will definitely find a chance to repay you. George looked at Aris seriously. Yes, we will definitely repay you. Fred also looked at Aris. Okay, you two, stop being sentimental. Aris shook his head, if you really want to repay me, then please do it, King. I may invent some gadgets later. Of course, it would be best if you could participate. I always think you are all people with great ideas. Can you invent something more interesting? George and Fred's eyes lit up. It's too early to talk about this now. Aris shook his head and did not explain in detail. Naturally, he had some thoughts in mind when he helped these two people. This semester he plans to make some magic technology products, similar to magic joke toys, but more sophisticated and more attractive. The most important thing is that these things are made with elemental alchemy and contain a lot of magical technology. Aris wanted to promote these magical products, but he didn't want to spend too much time on it, so he had to leave it to the two of them. The rise of magical technology and elemental magic cannot be achieved overnight. Since Aris chose Hogwarts as the birthplace, he would transform it into a real magical technology paradise. Naturally, there are those magic technologies and magic products that can be widely circulated. This was something he had decided at the beginning, and the appearance of George and Fred just happened to help him achieve this goal. He believed that with their abilities, they could definitely promote those things. Even the students of Hogwarts are fascinated by it. This replica of the Marauders map is your first project, and it's also my first project. We must do it well. I am currently developing another fun thing. I will show it to you once it is finished. I believe it will be a surprise. Aris kept it a secret and winked at George and Fred. What type is it about? Fred couldn't help but ask out of curiosity. You can think of it as a casual magic toy like international wizarding chess. Aris smiled. A toy like wizarding chess? George was stunned. 0 request flowers. It's not easy to complete a work like this. Can you really do it? Of course I won't say anything I'm not sure of. Aris nodded affirmatively. What's the name of your thing? You can at least tell us first. Fred couldn't help but speak. Well, I haven't thought of a specific name yet, but it can be called a card game. Aris patted the villain's shoulder, then turned and walked towards the auditorium. Okay, don't ask about this for now, just focus on selling as many replica life point maps as possible. This way you can use the money to invest, and if you sell the things I develop later, I can give you a share of the profits. Really? You really want to take us with you? George and Fred's eyes lit up and they quickly caught up with Aris in front. Certainly. But let's hurry to the auditorium now. The first-year nurses should all be there. I don't want to miss this year's sorting ceremony. Aris walked quickly. It was not very interested in the sorting of other little wizards, but it had not forgotten Luna and would sort them again. Although he already knew the result, he still wanted to witness that moment. He knew Luna would want him there. Then you go first, we. George and Fred suddenly stopped, thought for a moment and said, we need to make some preparations and go to the lounges of the 4 major colleges in a while. By the way, if you see Filch, don't tell him where we are. George and the other two warned. Are you in trouble again? Alex turned around and glanced at the two of them. No, we just went to Filch's office again and he happened to see us. We'd better hide now. It will be troublesome if we are caught by him. George and Fred looked at each other and quickly bought it. Isn't this considered getting into trouble? Aris looked at the two of them and shook his head helplessly. These two guys really won't die unless they seek death, but this is also due to their personality. Aris didn't say anything else. Walk quickly towards the auditorium. He had heard cheers coming from over there. It should be the first-year wizards who had entered the Venue. Chapter 195. Welcome, welcome to Hogwarts. You will have a pleasant 7 years of study here, and I believe that everyone will never forget it. When Aris walked into the hall, she just heard Dumbledore's familiar voice. Like in previous years, he stood in the middle of the teachers' seats in the auditorium, with his arms outstretched as if he was hugging the new students. There was a hint of authority in his gentle tone. Is that Professor Dumbledore? He is the greatest white wizard in the world and the most powerful wizard. I have always admired him. The ceilings here are so different, I'm so excited. This is my dream school, Hogwarts. I'm finally here. Did you see those candles? They were floating in the air, just like the stars twinkling in the night sky. It was amazing. When Aris walked past the front of the auditorium, he heard the young wizards discussing 107 in a low voice. In the crowd, Luna was looking at the teacher's seat curiously. However, when Aris looked over, she seemed to sense something and looked over as well, then smiled sweetly. Don't be nervous. The sorting will be just a small test. You should know that, right? Aris winked at Luna. The little girl nodded slightly, didn't say anything, just smiled. Aris also smiled. He felt that he might have thought too much. Luna didn't seem nervous at all and looked calmer than those professors. He didn't say anything else, but turned and walked towards Ravenclaw's table. Hey, Aris, where have you been? Terry saw Aris coming and quickly proved his location. Anthony, who was standing by, also looked over and asked, I heard that Aris's sister is one of the freshmen this year. Is that true? Yes, that's right. Alex nodded gently, I just went to talk to Professor Lockhart for a while, so I'm late. I didn't miss anything, did I? There's no party. It just started and the sorting hat hasn't been brought up yet. Terry shrugged and pointed to the front. At this moment, Professor McGonagall was placing 10 worn-out hats on 10 tall stools at the front of the long table. Next, the 10th graders would come forward one by one to perform the separation ceremony. This is an old tradition of Hogwarts. It was also the first time for Aris to watch this ceremony from the perspective of an audience member, and she was quite interested. He remembered that at this time last year, Harry Potter caused quite a stir. But it seemed that the stir he caused was even bigger than Harry Potter's. Aris, it's Luna, right? Your sister. Anthony looked at the quiet, smiling girl among the freshmen. Anthony also attended the previous birthday party, so he had some impression of Luna. Yeah, that's right. Aris nodded slightly, why are you so concerned about this matter? No, I'm just curious if the sister of the strongest genius freshman is also a genius. Anthony smiled awkwardly. I heard that Luna had learned a lot of magic before he entered school. He seemed to have demonstrated it at his birthday party. Terry noticed that Aris's gaze was a little strange, so he quickly tried to smooth things over. Well, did Luna perform magic at the birthday party? At this time, even Aris was a little curious. Ru is not the type of person who likes to show off, so why would he cast a spell at a birthday party? In fact, it was very simple. We were playing a little crazy at the time and accidentally threw the cake at Luna. He casually used a cleansing spell, and then bounced back the cakes thrown at him by the others. This song surprised many senior students. The precision and ease with which he casts spells are just like you. Hearing this, Aris smiled and shook his head slightly. So that's how it is. He had long known that Luna had good talent, otherwise she wouldn't have learned elemental magic so easily, and even progressed faster than Hermione and the others. In the original book, Luna has always been very low-key, but she has participated in several key battles and survived to the end. This is enough to prove her strength. When Aris heard someone praising Luna, he couldn't help but feel happy for some reason. Okay, that's difficult. Professor McGonagall's voice suddenly sounded in the front, and the whole auditorium suddenly became quiet. The people whose names I'm going to read will come up and sit on this stool one by one, and put on their hats for the sorting. After that, she opened her mouth and said a name, Luna Lovegood. What surprised Aris was that Luna's name was ranked first. Isn't this a bit strange? Alex glanced at Professor McGonagall and muttered softly. Aren't the names of the branches arranged in alphabetical order? How could Luna's name be ranked first? He turned his gaze back to Dumbledore. At this moment, the silver-haired old wizard was holding up a goblet. He seemed to have noticed Aris's gaze, so he raised the goblet and gestured to Aris. Could this be what Dumbledore meant? Aris shook his head and immediately put the question aside. Although it is a bit strange, there is nothing to delve into. It is just a list of names. Maybe a professor made a mistake when compiling the list. At this moment, Aris glanced across the Gryffindor table and frowned slightly. From the beginning, he had been looking for Hermione, but he couldn't find her. This was strange. Hermione would never miss the sorting ceremony for freshmen, something she had been looking forward to during the day. But now, that girl is not here? Harry, have you seen Hermione? Alex turned and patted Harry Potter, who was sitting at the next table. No, I thought he was with you. Harry was a little stunned. I haven't seen him since this afternoon. Wasn't he with you? Ronald next to Harry also spoke. Yes, she was training with me in the lab before, but I came out first and I didn't see her afterwards. Aris's frown deepened. Is she still there? Harry speculated. Probably not. Hermione said this morning that she wanted to attend the sorting ceremony tonight. After all, Luna will be there too, and she really wants to know which house Luna will be sorted into. Ronald said. That's strange. 0.1 Harry frowned slightly. Aris thought about it and looked at Luna, who was sitting on a high stool with the sorting hat on. At this time, the voice of the sorting hat just sounded. Well, a very smart girl, and she has great courage. She is full of curiosity about the unknown, and has an extremely strong desire for knowledge. Then I declare, Ravenclaw. Just like in the novel, Luna was assigned to Ravenclaw Academy. Several Gryffindors nearby sighed with obvious regret. Especially Harry and Ronald, they shook their heads helplessly. I knew she would choose Ravenclaw. Ronald shrugged, not at all surprised. After all, Aris is there. Harry smiled. They both turned around at the same time. At this time, Aris had already stood up. It seems that he is preparing to leave the auditorium. Chapter 196. What is he going to do, brother? Luna, who had just come down from the sorting ceremony, saw Aris leaving the long table and couldn't help asking. Terry shrugged, I don't know, he was just eating. Maybe, he went to find Hermione. Harry Potter suddenly interrupted at this time, and Ronald nodded thoughtfully. I'll go take a look. Luna left the table without hesitation and chased in the direction Aris left. Aren't you going to leave after the sorting ceremony? The freshmen are the protagonists today. Harry couldn't help but shout. What are they doing? At this time, Ronald's sister Ginny Weasley had also completed the sorting and walked to the Gryffindor side. Not surprisingly, she was sorted into Gryffindor like their brother. I don't understand. Ronald shook his head, somewhat confused. He felt that Aris and Luna's reactions were excessive. Perhaps Hermione just accidentally fell asleep in the dormitory. Is that possible? If I leave now when the party isn't over yet and the professors find out, I might get scolded. Forget it, ignore them. Harry shook his head and continued to look at the sorting ceremony for the freshmen. Luna chased out of the auditorium and quickly caught up with Aris. Of course, this was also because Aris deliberately waited for him. Why did you come out here? Don't you want to experience the freshman orientation? Aris looked at Luna, who had caught up with him with some confusion, and asked. Did something happen to Hermione? Luna immediately guessed the reason why Aris left. I don't know. I feel a little uneasy, so I want to go find her. Aris' tone turned a little serious. Logically speaking, the crisis in the second semester should not have occurred. After all, he had put away the diary that caused the trouble. Tom Reed would not look for Ginny again and release the basilisk in the Chamber of Secrets. But will things really happen as he thought? Aris is a little unsure. Because of his appearance, there have been changes in the plot before. Where was the last time you met? Luna asked. Laboratory, looking for a room. Then let's go there first. The two of them didn't waste any more time and walked quickly upstairs to the castle. The item of request is on the 8th floor of the castle, and the Great Hall is on the 1st floor. They need to go through the corridor and go up all the way. Dim lights shone on both sides of the corridor along the way, and soon a moving picture frame appeared, and the people inside looked at the two people walking in the corridor with some surprise. Where are these two little wizards going? Aren't the others in the Great Hall? Hey, little one, stop running around, or I'll tell Filch. They're already trying to stir up trouble on the first day of school. It seems like this year's freshmen are not very honest. Every time Alex and his companions walked past a picture frame, a sound would be heard from inside. Of course, there would be no sound coming from those landscape paintings and animal paintings, otherwise it would be considered a supernatural event. The two of them moved very quickly and ignored the sound coming from the frame. After a while, they arrived at the corridor outside the room of requirement. I've always wanted to come here and now I finally have the chance. Luna couldn't help but speak, her eyes shining. I have always known that Aris has a laboratory in school, and it is very useful. She also knew that Hermione and Chu often practiced magic in the laboratory. He had always been looking forward to this place, but was too embarrassed to tell Aris. Let's go in and take a look. Maybe Hermione is still in there. If she's not there, it will be troublesome. Aris knew Hermione's character. She didn't go to the auditorium to attend the sorting ceremony, so it wouldn't be strange if she was in the laboratory. But if she wasn't in the laboratory, given her personality, she would never miss the sorting ceremony. Whether because of her character or her compliance with discipline, she should be in the auditorium. If you want to get in here, just think about your needs and walk down the corridor 3 times. Should I have told you this? Aris teaches Luna how to enter the room of requirement while demonstrating. I know. Luna nodded quickly. It seemed that she had thought about the scene of entering the room of requirement countless times in her mind. A door appeared on the wall of the corridor. As Aris pushed open the door, the whatever you ask for finally appeared before Luna's eyes. Max. As soon as he entered the laboratory, Aris shouted, but there was no response from inside. Hermione, are you there? Luna also shouted. The laboratory was still quiet, with no response. Soon, Aris and Luna checked the entire laboratory together, and as expected, Hermione was not there. Where would she go? Luna asked softly, looking at Aris carefully. Aris frowned slightly and shook his head lightly. I don't know, maybe it's really like Harry said, he has already returned to the dormitory. But I always have a bad feeling in my heart, as if something is going to happen. Aris turned his head and looked towards the center of the laboratory, where there was a huge long table. He would usually be there whenever he needed to analyze data. At this moment, he seemed to have thought of something and walked quickly towards the long table. No, it's gone. Aris searched quickly, but after a moment, he rubbed his brows in annoyance. What's missing? Luna asked curiously. 107A diary, I clearly put it here, but now it's gone. Is that diary important? It's not important, but it's dangerous. If Hermione takes it, we'll be in trouble. Why would you put such a dangerous thing on the table? Luna couldn't understand. I forgot to put it away because I was thinking of something else. When Aris left, he was so intent on finding out why the Defense Against the Dark Arts office was blocked that he forgot to put away Riddle's diary. Usually there are not many people coming to the laboratory. Hermione and Chu are both sensible people. They will not touch Aris's things casually. Even if they are curious, they will ask in advance. Now that the diary is missing, there is a high possibility that it was taken away by Hermione. That diary has the power to bewitch people. Even if it is not opened, if Tom Riddle wants to bewitch Hermione, he will have a way. Could it be that the power of plot revision has appeared again? Does Tom Riddle's diary have to come out to cause trouble? Thinking of this, Aris frowned again, and then walked quickly towards the door of the room of requirement. He had to find Hermione as soon as possible. Before she was completely bewitched by Tom Riddle, or before she got into trouble. Luna, come with me to the Gryffindor common room. Good. Chapter 197. Hall. After Aris appeared in the auditorium, many people looked over. Among them was Dumbledore, of course. Professor McGonagall also glanced at him unintentionally, and Professor Flitwick, because he was forced to stay in the library for the entire summer, thinking about Aris's problem, so now he was really full of resentment towards Aris. A good summer vacation was wasted like this, and he felt that nothing could be worse than this. What is that guy going to do now? When Aris left the auditorium, Professor Flitwick couldn't help but tug at the corner of Hagrid's clothes. What? High-Ge's attention was originally on the freshmen's sorting ceremony, but after Professor Flitwick pulled his clothes, he looked over with a warning look. Aris just came here and now he's leaving again. Do you know what he's going to do? Flitwick always felt that the guy was not prepared to do anything good. How should I know? I'm not a worm in Aris' stomach. Hagrid rolled her eyes. Do you want to go and take a look? Professor Flitwick was still a little worried. Who cares what he does? There are not many people in this school who can beat him. What can happen? Hagrid didn't take it seriously. That's true. Professor Flitwick shook his head. Even if we are worried, we shouldn't worry about him, but some other unlucky guy. Shaking his head, Flitwick put the matter aside and focused on watching the sorting ceremony. He was still very concerned about which of this year's freshmen would enter Ravenclaw. Just as everyone was looking at the new students, a figure at the edge of the teacher's seat stood up silently and left his seat. No one noticed this scene. Even Dumbledore just glanced at it and didn't pay any more attention to it. But looking at the departing figure, he seemed a little confused, with his brows slightly furrowed. From that back, he seemed to think of someone, but after thinking about it, Dumbledore shook his head again, thinking it was impossible. How could that guy appear in Hogwarts? The corridor outside the House of Requests. Brother, is that diary really that dangerous? Luna couldn't help but ask. Well, it's dangerous. What on earth is that? Horcrux, Voldemort's Horcrux. Aris said with a serious expression. What? Luna was obviously shocked, her eyes widened and she showed an exaggerated expression. But how did that person's Horcrux appear here? Did you bring it here? Yet. Aris nodded and did not hide it from Luna. What should we do now? What if, Hermione is hurt by that Horcrux? It will surely alarm a lot of people, and the professors won't let it go. Brother, you won't be expelled from school, right? Luna suddenly panicked. If it was an ordinary matter, she would definitely not lose her composure like this. But when it came to Aris, her heart was suddenly in turmoil. Don't worry, I'll take care of it. Aris touched the little girl's head and smiled comfortingly. As they were talking, the two had already walked through several corridors and arrived outside the Gryffindor common room. Before their eyes was a huge picture frame. This is a portrait of the fat lady. Password. Seeing someone coming, the fat man glanced at Aris and Luna and spoke slowly. Dragon scum. Aris said calmly. Then, the fat lady's portrait slowly opened, revealing the door leading to the Gryffindor common room. Brother, how do you know the password to the Gryffindor common room? After entering the lounge, Luna asked curiously. Every year on the day when new students register, their passwords are the same, as if they have never been changed. Aris shrugged. So that's how it is. Luna smiled and shook her head slightly. Well, actually Harry and Ronald told me that. At this time, Aris's eyes were already looking at the two stairs in front. There are two stairs, one leading to the girls' dormitory and the other leading to the boys' dormitory. He had been here before to look for Harry and Ronald, so he certainly knew which way to go. After just a slight hesitation, he walked towards the passage on the left without hesitation. The reason for the hesitation was not because I was unsure of the way, but because I felt a little embarrassed. After all, he was going to the girls' dormitory now, and no one knew what he would see. Luna, you go ahead. Aris glanced at the girl behind him. Well, if a girl leads the way, it shouldn't be a problem, right? As he was thinking this, Luna had already walked forward without asking the reason. Do you know which dormitory Hermione is in? A moment later, the two had arrived at the girls' dormitory, and several doors appeared in front of them. That should be it. Alex recalled that Hermione once complained to him that she couldn't see the Black Lake from her dormitory. It should be the dormitory on the left side of the corridor, and there are only two dormitories on the left side, one of which has a sign with a few names written on it. Hermione wasn't one of those names. So the remaining dormitory must be the one Hermione was in. Aris went up and knocked on the door. Soon, there was a hurried sound of dragging a stool from inside. Who? Then, Hermione's voice came from inside. It's me, Aris. And Luna. Soon, the dormitory door opened, and Hermione looked at the two people at the door with some surprise. Why are you here? We noticed that you didn't go to the auditorium, and we were a little worried, so we came to find you. Luna spoke first, then looked at Aris with a questioning look in her eyes. Why didn't you go to the auditorium? Did you go back to the dormitory after coming out of the lab? Aris asked. Well, I'm a little tired, so I want to come back and rest for a while. There was something clearly wrong with Hermione's expression, with a hint of guilt. Did you bring anything out of the lab? Alice asked directly without beating around the bush. Voldemort's Horcrux is too important, he must find it as soon as possible, without a moment's delay. What? Hermione looked up at Aris in confusion. No, I left right after I came out of the magic circle. The little girl looked a little confused. Really? Aris frowned. It seems that things are not as simple as he thought. The diary was not brought out by Hermione? Really not. I know that everything in the lab is very important to you, so I would never take it out without permission. Hermione nodded affirmatively. Aris frowned and said nothing, but couldn't help looking into Hermione's dormitory. Then he saw some clothes with very little fabric hanging inside, which looked a little cute. He quickly withdrew his gaze and stroked his forehead helplessly. If you don't believe it, you can come in and take a look. Hermione seemed to notice Aris' gaze and opened the dormitory door and said. Judging from her expression, it seemed that she really didn't take anything from the laboratory. No, I just came here to ask. By the way, if you go to the auditorium now, you should still be able to have dinner. Aris smiled and said, it's a long night. If you don't eat something, you will definitely be hungry. Ah. Hermione was stunned and didn't react for a moment. Aris's change of topic was so sudden and quick that I was not prepared for it. In fact, Aris was secretly complaining in his heart at this time. If Hermione didn't take the diary, then things would become complicated. Chapter 198. Aris, what happened? Hermione obviously noticed that Aris looked a little unhappy and frowned. She instinctively felt that what Aris was talking about was very important. If it was really lost from the laboratory, then she is undoubtedly the most suspicious. Because this afternoon, only she and Aris had entered the laboratory of the Room of Requirement. You don't look very good, you look a little serious. Hermione couldn't help but ask after all. A very dangerous thing has been lost in the laboratory. If it can't be found as soon as possible, I'm afraid there will be big trouble. Aris did not hide it from Hermione and spoke directly. What is that? Maybe I've seen it before. Hermione also frowned. A diary, a very old one, was placed on the long table in the laboratory, and now it's gone. Aris said in a deep voice. That thing is important to you. That is Voldemort's Horcrux. It has been cast with extremely advanced dark magic and has the power to bewitch people. It might even bring Voldemort back to life. Hearing this, Hermione showed a look of horror. Even Luna, who was standing by, showed surprise again. She didn't know before that the diary couldn't revive Voldemort. If 003 is really like that, leaving the diary in Hogwarts will definitely bring great danger. No wonder Aris, who is usually calm, showed a rare serious look today. Luna rarely sees Aris like this. Hermione, think about it carefully. Besides you and your brother, has anyone else been to the Room of Requirement today? Luna couldn't help but ask. No, I'm sure of that. At least not when I was around, said Hermione. When did you leave? Aris asked suddenly. Probably before the dinner starts. Hermione thought for a moment and said. Has anyone been in there since you left? Everyone is in the auditorium today watching the sorting ceremony. No one will be there at that time. This matter must be investigated thoroughly, and quickly. Let's split up. Rhys said, turning around first. Luna, go back to the auditorium and see who is missing now. Hermione, gather everyone who can enter the laboratory and ask them if they have seen the diary. Then you should get together and exchange information to see if you can find any clues. Aris quickly arranged it. What about you? Luna and Hermione both looked at Aris. I'll think of another way. Hurry up, the day we don't find the diary will increase the danger. Understood. Soon, the three of them took action separately. The girls' bathroom on the third floor of the castle. A figure was standing quietly in the bathroom at this moment, like a human puppet, quietly looking at the wash basin in front of the mirror. Then, a strange sound came from somewhere. The hissing sound, like a snake sticking out its tongue, filled the entire bathroom, which was very strange. Some mysterious power seemed to be awakened in the huge bathroom. From the only light in the darkness, it seemed as if some huge creature was coming out from the underground temple. But soon, all the sounds disappeared, as if they had never appeared. Not long after, the entire bathroom became quiet, and the figure from before had long since disappeared. Strange, I clearly heard someone speaking snake language. Not long after, Aris appeared outside the bathroom. Oh, look who it is, the famous Aris, the new Hogwarts legend. Such an outstanding boy actually broke into the girls' bathroom. If this news gets out, I wonder what kind of sensation it will cause. Suddenly, a sharp female voice sounded in the bathroom. Then, a ghost suddenly appeared in front of Aris. "Are you Myrtle?" Aris asked subconsciously. "I am so honored that the famous Aris actually knows me." The gold digger folded her hands in front of her chest, looked at Aris with peach blossom eyes and spoke in a shy tone. "What happened here just now?" Aris asked in a deep voice, not paying attention to Myrtle's teasing. "What happened?" "No, nothing happened." Myrtle subconsciously glanced at the bathroom behind her and shook her head quickly, seeming a little guilty. "I just heard someone speaking snake language." Aris looked at Myrtle calmly with a thoughtful look in his eyes. I really don't know. I just went to the boys' bathroom downstairs and saw a little boy." When she said this, Myrtle's face suddenly turned red. "You actually went to peek at such a critical moment?" Aris looked at the ghost in front of him speechlessly, almost cursing in his heart. "Don't tell anyone, or I'll be too embarrassed to see anyone." Myrtle quickly flew into the bathroom and hid in the toilet in a cubicle. Aris didn't ask any more questions, and walked directly into the bathroom and came to the wash basins in the middle. He carefully observed the wash basins and found that some of them showed signs of movement, and those signs were very recent. It's obviously a recent occurrence. The girls' bathroom on the third floor is rarely visited because of Myrtle. Moreover, these wash basins are connected to the base, and the base is firmly embedded in the floor. It is impossible for anyone to move it away and move it back to its original position. There is clearly something wrong with these traces. Is it still too late? Aris frowned. The girls' bathroom on the third floor is the entrance to Slytherin's Chamber of Secrets. Anyone who has read the original novel knows this, and Aris naturally knows it too. So, after Tom Riddle's diary was accidentally lost, he first thought of this place and then came here. And things turned out just as he expected. The door to the secret room has been opened. The basilisk inside must have been awakened. Soon, the basilisk will appear in the castle and kill people under the control of Tom Riddle. If the diary is not found as soon as possible, things will get worse and worse. Although in the original book, no one was killed after the basilisk appeared due to various unexpected reasons, Aris didn't want to take the risk. He was not sure that everything would go according to the original work. Because of his existence, the plot of this world had deviated from its original trajectory due to the butterfly effect, so the result might be different. Now he had to find the diary as soon as possible. "I just don't know who got the diary. I don't know why things have become so troublesome. It would be nice if there was surveillance in the room of requests." Suddenly, Aris's eyes lit up slightly. Then, as if he had thought of something, he quickly walked towards the room of requirement on the 8th floor of the castle. Chapter 199. How is it? Any clues? No, everyone was basically in the auditorium, and nothing unusual was found. I asked Harry and the others, they didn't go to the lab today. After Luna and Hermione acted separately, they gathered together again and reported the situation respectively. "Where's Chu?" Luna asked suddenly. "It seems that she didn't go to the lab today. I heard from Ronald that she went back to the dormitory. Not in the auditorium." Luna looked thoughtful. "It shouldn't be him. He knows the importance of the laboratory just like me. He won't take anything out unless he gets Aris' permission. Did the diary just disappear out of thin air?" Luna frowned slightly. "What are you talking about? So mysterious." At this time, Harry and Ronald came over. So far, almost everyone who could enter the room of requirement laboratory was here. Hermione had already asked Harry and Ronald about this. They said with certainty that they had not been to the laboratory today. A very dangerous item was lost in the laboratory. Hermione briefly told Harry and Ronald what happened. Aris's stuff. A diary. Harry and Ronald looked at each other, their eyes and hands showing doubt. "Where's Aris? Where did he go?" The two looked around and didn't see Aris, so they asked. "He should think of other ways." Hermione looked at Harry seriously. "That diary is related to the you-know-who, it's very important. Aris told us to get the diary back as soon as possible." "Is it about Voldemort?" Harry's eyes flickered slightly. Ronald also showed a surprised look at this time. "What happened? How did it get involved with the mysterious man for no apparent reason? I'm not very clear about this matter. Anyway, let's wait until Aris comes back before we can talk about it." Hermione shook her head. Last semester it was Professor Quirrell, and this semester Voldemort actually showed up again. How many tricks does this guy have? Why does he seem to be everywhere? Harry frowned and muttered to himself. Look, is there one person missing from the teacher's desk? Luna suddenly asked. The three of them immediately looked over there. It's Professor Lockhart, he's not here. Hermione frowned again. Could this matter be related to Professor Lockhart? Harry couldn't help but ask. Last year, a professor was bewitched by Voldemort. Is it going to happen again this year? Ronald's face also looked a little strange. You can't say anything without evidence. Hermione shook her head. Don't you think Professor Lockhart is a little strange? Harry couldn't help but speak again. Come to think of it, he is completely different from what my mother described. Ron nodded in agreement. What's the difference? Hermione asked. In my mother's words, Professor Lockhart is a perfect person. He has great strength, impeccable appearance, and high intelligence. He is also the recipient of the Order of Merlin. But I've observed his appearance over the past 2 days, and I have to say he is indeed quite handsome, but his personality seems to have some room for improvement. Don't you think Professor Lockhart is a little cold? Ronald subconsciously lowered his voice. As a public figure, he should be able to adapt to crowded occasions, but Professor Lockhart doesn't seem to like being in crowded places. Doesn't this explain the problem? You are just guessing, there is no substantial evidence. Hermione rolled her eyes. If there's really something wrong with him, it will show up eventually. We still have a lot of time to observe it, don't we? Luna said. Yes, there is still a whole semester left. I am suddenly looking forward to tomorrow's defense against the dark arts class. What will he talk about? Harry shrugged. At this time, the freshman admission dinner was drawing to a close, and Professor Dumbledore organized a chorus without rules for the students, just like in previous years. After a burst of laughter and joy, the young wizards of Hogwarts, led by their class leaders, walked towards the lounges of their respective colleges. What should we do? Should we go look for Aris? Harry glanced at the Gryffindor table. The Gryffindor students had already started to gather. You guys go back to the dormitory first. I will tell my brother about the situation here. Luna said, giving them a reassuring look. It's getting late. We can't go out at night on the first day of school. Hermione thought for a moment and nodded slightly, so if there are no further arrangements, let's go back first. Let's see tomorrow if Aris has any results. 0 request flowers. The 4 of them quickly separated and walked towards their respective college gathering points. At the same time. Are you sure you didn't see anyone enter that door after Miss Granger left this afternoon? Aris was standing on the 8th floor of the castle at this time, responding to every request, in the corridor outside the house. In front of him were the figures from several nearby picture frames, and even animals had gathered here. Aris has the gift of nature's language and can communicate with most animals. The animals in the frame are no exception. Dear Mr. Aris, I indeed did not see anyone else enter that room. I didn't see anyone coming to this corridor before the dinner. Roar, 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 0 squeak, squeak, squeak. The people in the picture frames started to speak one after another, and even the small animals started to cry out in a very human way, with various animal sounds being heard. Aris listened carefully, and then frowned more and more. No one has been here before. How come no one has been here before? Aris frowned in confusion. If no one entered the laboratory, did the diary disappear out of thin air? Things seem to be getting more and more complicated. You guys go ahead first, I'll come back to you if there's anything else. Alex waved his hand. The edges and small animals on the picture frame suddenly scattered away, and there was a feeling of being pardoned. Now Aris has mastered the core rules of the entire Hogwarts castle. In other words, he is already the true master of the castle. All the picture frames and even the grass and trees in this castle will naturally obey Aris's orders unconditionally. The dimly lit corridor was very quiet. Aris looked up at the ceiling, then at the walls on both sides of the corridor. An inexplicable feeling suddenly emerged from the bottom of his heart, and there seemed to be a voice in his mind that was getting louder and louder. Then, his eyes suddenly gleamed with a bright light. Then, he froze in place. The power of prophecy. At this time, Aris activated the power of vision without any warning. The pictures flashed through his mind like silhouettes of time. At the same time, a figure came silently behind him. Just quietly looking at Aris's corpse. Chapter 200. Did you see it clearly? A voice sounded behind him, and Aris frowned slightly, but did not exit the prophecy state. Obviously, he had noticed someone coming. Why are you here? Shouldn't you be in the auditorium at this time? Pictures kept flashing through his mind, and Aris responded subconsciously. As the last of the prophetic power faded, his eyes slowly returned to normal, and then he turned around. Mr. Grindelwald, wandering around the castle corridors at night, if you are discovered or seen by other professors, it may be harmful to you. Aris' tone was teasing. Yes, the person who came was Grindelwald disguised as Professor Lockhart. I'm a professor, and you're just a student. If we're discovered by other professors, you should explain to the two of us why we're here, right? September 17th. Grindelwald smiled faintly, and the face of Lockhart on his head looked particularly handsome. Aris is always a little uncomfortable. This face has nothing in common with Grindelwald. It is exactly Lockhart's own face. This shows how advanced Grindelwald's human transformation skills are. Never mind, none of this matters. What did you just see? Grindelwald shook his head slightly, and then his tone became serious. A fateful meeting, an ending that cannot be changed. Even the power of prophecy cannot fathom this force, but what is certain is that everything is heading towards one result. Aris's words were somewhat nonsensical, or in other words, ordinary people simply couldn't understand them. But Grindelwald understood what he meant instantly, because they had the same logical thinking, and looking at things from the perspective of prophecy would make many things much simpler. So this is why I came here. Maybe you will need my help, right? Grindelwald smiled faintly. You're right. I took it too lightly before. I thought that as long as I put the diary away, nothing would happen. But now it seems that once the butterfly's wings flap, what is rolling up may not be ocean waves, it could also be a sandstorm. And it was the kind that destroyed the world. I suddenly feel a little regretful. Aris smiled bitterly and shook his head, seeming a little helpless. Nothing has been finalized yet. You still have a chance, and so do I, don't I? Grindelwald looked at Aris. The conversation between the two was like a puzzle. Even if there was someone standing nearby, they probably wouldn't understand. However, the tacit understanding between the two allowed them to clearly understand what the other meant. After a brief exchange, Grindel and I left. Judging from the direction he was going, he should be preparing to go back to sleep. Aris stood there for a moment. Then, he quickly turned and walked towards the Gryffindor common room. Hermione, it's so late, why are you still writing in your diary? Paddle asked curiously as he looked at the girl who was still writing furiously under the desk lamp. Well, just a simple record of my school life. I might need to show it to my parents during the holidays so that they can understand what I do at school. Hermione looked back at Parvati Paddle and said with a smile. It's late, I'm going to bed first. Paddle didn't ask any more questions, turned around and got on the bed on the other side separated by a curtain. Well, good night. Good night. After they said good night to each other, Hermione turned her attention back to the diary on the table. Then, he slowly wrote a line of words. Things are a little strange today. Aris is so nervous for some reason. Maybe it's because of some dangerous magic item. But I think there may be more secrets. Everything will come out. After writing this, he put down his quill, stretched himself, and went to bed to rest. What she didn't realize was that just as he put down the feather pen, the line of words he wrote slowly disappeared on the page of the diary, as if the ink was absorbed by something. It was very magical. Then, a line of words appeared on the page of the diary. The smell of fresh magic, I'm finally free, Aris, we'll see you later. The words appeared for just a second, then quickly disappeared, as if they had never appeared. If Hermione saw this, she would probably be shocked, because Aris had previously told her about the characteristics of Voldemort's Horcruxes, and this situation seemed to be exactly the same as what Aris had said. If she saw this scene, she would probably guess that this notebook was definitely not as simple as he imagined, and might be the one Alex was looking for. Unfortunately, there aren't so many ifs. At this time, Hermione had already gone to bed and did not see the words that appeared at the back of the diary, 0, and the strange thing is that this laptop is very new, like it was newly bought. In fact, Hermione did buy this notebook from Diagon Alley just a few days before school started, so there was no mistake. The notebook that Aris had been looking for was not only a little worn, but also had Tom Riddle's name written on the pages. The two diaries are obviously different, yet they seem to have some strange connection. Outside the Gryffindor common room, Aris stood in front of the lounge door, hesitated for a moment, but did not go in directly. "Forget it, it's too late, let's talk about it tomorrow," he murmured and shook his head. Then he turned and walked towards the kitchen. At this time, Luna just came from the opposite side. "Brother, any progress?" She came here specifically to find Aris. As it was already very late, Luna seemed a little sneaky at this moment, just like those little wizards who wandered around at night, feeling very guilty. "There are some clues, but it's not certain yet." Aris thought for a moment and said. "What do you mean?" Luna was a little confused. "Isn't this matter very simple? All we have to do is find out who took the diary out and then take it back. That's how it was originally." Aris shook his head calmly, "But now, something unexpected has happened and there are some troubles." "Are you sure who took the diary?" Luna asked again. 1.6 I saw a figure from a fragment of the future, but the problem is not just with the person, but also with the diary. That diary seems to have undergone some unknown changes. It may also be a backup plan left by Voldemort. Anyway, I can't determine the exact location of the diary now," Aris said with a frown. He wanted to try to explain it to Luna, but obviously failed. At this moment, Luna was completely confused. She knew the meaning of each of the words Aris said, but when they were put together, she didn't quite understand. "Forget it, you'll know later." Aris looked at the confused Luna and sighed helplessly, "I'm afraid this matter can't be solved in a short time. We must take some countermeasures in advance to prevent a greater disaster. The door to the secret room is about to open." If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you're notified of future uploads. You can find the next parts in the playlist visible on the screen or on my channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.